Hello, everybody. Anthony Metivier here from magneticmarymethod.com. Let's talk about the news with Felicity Huffman and some other people, 40 people, I guess, in total, who have been charged with a U.S. college cheating scam. Sorry, this is a scam thing. If you're joining us, hi, Harsh. Thanks for saying hello. Hit the thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to this channel, get subscribed. If you're watching the replay, also use the discussion because I want to know what you think about this. I have some thoughts, and we'll talk about why that these people could have avoided this altogether if they would at least teach their kids these memory techniques. If you look in the description below, there's resources for you. I've interviewed a number of parents and they have their kids who are using memory techniques, 10-year-olds who can memorize royalty and all kinds of information because they've learned memory techniques. One of them, Kevin Ayers, he went on to memorize a TED Talk and go and give a TED Talk to inspire other parents to have their kids going and learning memory techniques. So you don't have to cheat to get your way into college. And why would you want to cheat anyway? So I want to do this respectfully, though, and, just obviously innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, all that sort of stuff. But the real issue here is that memory techniques eliminate the need to cheat. They are the best possible advantage that you could have. And we're going to talk about how, we're going to talk about why. And shout out to Eric. Thanks for saying hello in Maryland. And you're very welcome. I love doing these live feeds. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up and get active in the chat. Let's have a discussion. This is not a one-way sort of lecture or anything like that. It's an interactive discussion. Iron Man is here today. And he is obviously not human. Neither is Tony Stark, but always an inspiration. Good to see Arturo Luna in Paris, France. Bonjour. Comment ça va? So, the larger issue here is that there's anxiety, there's pain, there's frustration, there's scarcity to get the best possible education, and there's a deep, deep willingness to break the rules. And that's called lying. It's not telling the truth. And, if we look at our man Jordan Peterson here, well, look, number one thing is always tell the truth, or at least don't lie. That's one of the rules, right? And that's very, very important because, for one thing, a college education isn't really worth what it used to be worth. And there's other ways around this, to be sure, if you couldn't get into the college that you want. And then there's just ways to maximize the value of the college you do get into, even if it's not one of these top schools. Then we have the fact that so many of the world's leading geniuses and entrepreneurs and people who really shake the world up, the very good people who make a big difference in the world, they don't necessarily have these degrees in the first place, but they often have very good memories, right? So thumbs up for memory. And Harsh is here. Sanket is here. Awesome. So Sanket is from India. Good to see you. Let me know in your language. One of these days I gotta memorize either Hindi or Urdu for hello, and didn't get that done. Harsh says, yeah, I'm a subscriber. Looking forward to buying the premium course. Can this method help me in learning chemistry, reactions, physics, learning new languages? Yeah, let's talk about that. Kyle says hello as well. Hi, Kyle. So Harsh, yeah, everything there. So chemistry, is not something I'm totally familiar with, but I remember Miss Rolston, grade 9. Was one of my favorite teachers in chemistry. And if I remember, like obviously the periodic table of the elements is something, and you've got numbers involved there with words and vocabulary. So the cool thing is when you have a good detailed working memory palace strategy is you can just go through the periodic table of the elements, start with the words first, and then add all those numbers later. You can cross-index it in your mind. I don't know if that's exactly what you need in chemistry, but if it is, then that's what we can talk about, and that's what you'll learn in the course. And there's a number of things too, like chemical reactions, processes, if this then, that sort of stuff. All that's covered in the masterclass. Also, there's a huge FAQ section there. So if things are really, really troubling to you, you can go through there first. And then if there's something that you really need, you send me the example, I'll walk you through it. And when I do that, I say exactly what I would do to memorize it. And I often end up memorizing the stuff myself, just simply because of how the techniques work. So let me know if you have more questions around that. Physics as well. I mean, anything that's an equation, no problem. And concept, it's all covered. Learning new languages, of course, that's the big thing in the masterclass. So after you take the master plan, when you're inside, you want to look at the study guide and think about what to do next. And in your case, I would say master plan plus uh, how to learn and memorize the vocabulary of any language. Then you're probably going to want the major method after that. And so you'll take the numbers course, and that talks all through math, equations, and everything related to numbers and numeracy and so forth. And that should get you rolling with all this stuff. And then in terms of verbatim things that you might want to memorize, then you take the course on poetry. I'm thinking of changing the name of the course on poetry so it's clear that actually it's about verbatim, word for word, sentence for sentence, when you just got to get that done. So that would be the path I would suggest for you. And then, of course, there's little extracurricular activities for you that I know you're going to love. So the last thing I'll say, Harsh, is that the thing to understand is that everything is in language, right? So when we are memorizing information, we're always memorizing language at one level or another, right? And the science here is that we're turning semantic information into episodic information, and we just remember episodic information a lot better, especially when we weave it together with space, and that's where spatial memory comes in, and that's what the memory palace is. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Mwah. So let me know if you have more questions around that, and we'll jam out some answers for you. Eric says, working each day on my memory palaces for the sake of remembering everything I need to know at my new restaurant gig. Awesome, awesome. That's so cool, man. Really love the updates. Keep them coming. And for the sake of remembering everything, that's beautiful. Great brain exercise just to even, tackle it and then, zero in as well so that it's a skill where you can memorize very, very specific things. Kyle says, hello, greetings, Anthony. Hope you're having a good day. I'm having an excellent day. I saw a guy, Maddie, that I haven't seen since August, and we just had an amazing session this morning. Beautiful weather. Wow. And then I come home, and somehow this news story came across my table, and I was just like, exam cheating? Come on, we got to talk about this. There's no need. There's no need. There's no need. But we're going to do this tactfully. Everybody's innocent until guilty, but the larger issue here is obviously that parents need to know that you don't have to do this kind of stuff. You don't have to ruin the reputation of your kids, and you can just help them learn memory techniques. And again, if you're just joining us, in the description below, there's a number of links to interviews that I've done with parents and their children. And one of them in particular you're going to want to check out because as a father, he went and gave a TED Talk. Kevin Ayers, if memory serves, is his name, and I'm sure it does. I hope. Anyway, Imogen is his daughter, and you're gonna love that. You're absolutely gonna love that. And there's some other resources there for you as well, including a podcast I did and blog post I wrote about why they don't teach memory techniques in schools, because that's one of the biggest questions that I get. Right. So check those resources out now. Sanket says namaste is hello in Hindi. Oh, okay. Well, that's easy to remember. It's already in memory. I just didn't know that you used it as hello. I thought a lot of people use that as thank you or something like that, or goodbye and blessing. But interesting. Thank you. So, okay. So namaste is what I got to say. Is it the same in Urdu? I'd be curious to know, Sanket. Let me know. Eric says Jordan Peterson is great. Current book of his you're reading? Well, I read off and on both 12 Rules for Life and Maps of Meaning. I'm a big fan of Maps of Meaning. I think it's really, really great, and highly recommend it to anyone. I'm not sure it's a kind of like an audiobook thing, but apparently the audiobook is available. But I'd read it, and it is sort of a book. I was thinking about it in a parallel book, and one of the reasons why I like it so much is because it's similar in a lot of ways to another book that I really loved when I was in university called A Thousand Plateaus by Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari. And yeah, there's parallels there, even though Peterson's not a big fan of some of the Deleuze-like things, but they don't have to be in order to be similar. All right. Arturo says, bonjour. Actually, I am a Mexican in Paris. Big fan of your videos and looking forward to subscribing to the premium course. All right. Well, thanks for saying, and thanks for being a fan, and thanks for joining us. And when you do, then I can't wait. That will be great. I'm going to see if I can raise this up a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Um, Great. So keep your chats coming. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Hit the thumbs up, and let's uh, let's talk about this. Oh, well, we got some more chats here. Eric says, index cards with separate categories are helping me with memorizing material at my new job, as well as memory palaces. Great, thanks for letting me know that and letting us know that, Eric. So you're referring to, I guess, pretty much video 3 in the master plan and that training. So excellent, excellent. Let's see here. Kyle says, do you believe some people are naturally more morning people than night? Which one would you prefer to be? And could you use memory techniques to change your personality? That's a great question, Kyle. Let's jam on that. Um, that's interesting. And, Maps of Meaning has something to say about that, actually. Okay, so let's break this down. It's not that I believe it or don't believe it. We just know that some people are more morning people and more night people. There's some good research on this that I've read. There's a book, excuse my reach, that you are going to love. It's called Rest. And Alex Pang, I want to get him on the podcast, actually. We sort of, or I don't know, I had some kind of contact on Twitter. Not sure how to explain if that is even contact, but in any case, I want to get him on the podcast to talk about it, but you're going to want to read that book because it'll give you some ideas around that and some of the research around that. But yeah, it's not about belief. We just know it to be, so I don't need to believe it. The question is, to what extent are you going to figure out what is for you and then optimize that? And then to what extent is that going to be true for how long, right? Because there are times when I've been an evening person, there are times when I've been a morning person, and they inexplicably switch, and they switched many times in my life. And so it's just a transition. And yeah, and it's really, really interesting. Like, for example, I used to write always in the morning. Now I kind of prefer to write more like after 1 p.m. I don't know why it's because I moved to Australia or whatever, but that's just the way that it's been. I used to do 2K words, 2,000 words every morning, just on schedule. And then it just changed. And I think it changed because of Australia, and it's not like I don't get up at the same time. I even get up earlier in Australia, but I just am not in the writing zone. So now I usually typically do all my writing 1 p.m. or 3 p.m., depending on what's going on. And things just change, and change is the only constant, etc., etc. Now, on to the other part of your excellent question here is, could you use memory techniques to change your personality? Well, this is interesting, right? Because that's essentially what Jordan Peterson is talking about. How could you make the change in your life? It is going to be a change to your personality, because the kinds of change that he's talking about in future authoring, self-authoring, all that stuff, is change to your personality, to the fundamental psychological structure of your personality, which actually requires neuroplastic change as well. And that neuroplastic change most likely comes through mucking around with your episodic memory and what he calls in Maps of Meaning nestic memory. Now, I've never quite gotten down to the nitty-gritty of what nestic memory actually means, other than I think it may be the memory of memory itself. And when I met him, somehow it slipped my mind to ask him that question, because there were bigger things going on. But bigger fish to fry at that moment than, hey man, let's get into this nestic memory thing. But I'm sure we'll meet again. But at the end of the day, I think nestic memory means your memory of memory as such, and perhaps your memory of the memory techniques that you could use. I don't know if that would fit under nestic memory, but it's a very, very interesting concept. So what happens here, and what his teaching is, and how it relates to essentially my teaching. Like, I was always astonished when I first started to read. I was just like, man, this dude and we were teaching very, very similar things from completely different angles. But what memory, well, actually, apparently a lot of people have told me he talks about memory palaces a lot, but he calls them memory castles, apparently. I've never actually heard him say that. But in any case, when you, let me go back. Memory in Maps of Meaning and how to use memory to change your life and so forth, it has a number of components. But the first thing to understand is that a lot of what you have as a competence comes from the way that episodic memory allows you to fill in the blanks so that you don't need the big picture in order to understand things. And one of the examples that he gives there is Freud's perception of Shakespeare's Hamlet, right? And then I've extrapolated from that, oh, well, that's how part of how Freud came up with the Oedipus complex. Because Peter Gay, in his biography of Freud, has some interesting ideas about how Freud came up with that. But from a brain science, memory science perspective, I think Peterson locks this in really nicely, how this is possible. So, and this is true of all of us. Like when we have insights and so forth, part of the insights that we get and how that we have them and so forth is that we're able to access what's in our existing memory to fill in the blanks that will either help us or hurt us. So a lot of what Peterson is talking about is how all this hurts us rather than helps us. But if we, and this is where, like if you haven't gone through future authoring, I highly recommend that you do. I have very similar exercises in the self-improvement supercharger program, but came up with them independently, and they've been in play for years before I knew about Jordan Peterson. But it's because he and I come from similar backgrounds, and I've myself gone through psychoanalysis more than once, but one time in particular was very, very impactful. Anyway, the thing is that when you have this effect of learning more narratives and the wisdom in the narratives, it's going to expand your episodic memory and the ability of your episodic memory to fill in the blanks, which is kind of like wisdom, which is then going to expand your ability to cope with the unknown, right? And you're just going to be a better citizen on the earth because you're going to essentially respond with wisdom, with discernment, with just focus and clarity that you don't get. And you get it through study, you get it through personal development, you get it through actually taking action. But Jordan Peterson 101 is just kind of, look, the actions that you take must be based on your existing competence. So a lot of people, they try to set goals that are impossible. They're going to frustrate them. They're going to frustrate them very, very quickly. Then they're going to say, I can't do it, which is probably the truth because of the nature of the goal that they set. And they have no awareness of their amnestic memory or their episodic memory. They have no awareness of how memory plays a role in their ability to either fill in the blanks and have absolute certainty, or at least the ability to go into the unknown with courage, right? Or they'll be crushed by the unknown and they will never do anything, right? So it's like memory can be your best weapon or it can be your worst enemy. And so that's why we need to train it. And we need to train it in different ways. And one of the ways he would recommend is to learn more narratives and learn more about how to read narratives. And that is very fascinating. So I want to catch up with what Alan is saying here. Thanks for that question, Kyle. Let me know if you have more things you want to talk about in there. Alan says, Jordan Peterson's anti-trans stance leaves much to be desired. Great timely topic for today. Morning versus evening is a meta program in NLP terms. Temperament may be more hardwired in, though. Yeah, temperament may well be. I mean, look, one of the things that I have noticed over my lifetime is just how much like I am my dad, and we ain't getting rid of that. So it's kind of just like, learn to love the beast, so to speak. Now, in terms of any sort of stance that leaves much to be desired, I'm not sure that a lot of people actually have paid their dues in terms of understanding what's being said there. I wouldn't say that necessarily in your case, but I don't know what there is left to be desired. I'm not particularly interested in the topic, and one of the reasons why I'm not interested in the topic is just simply because there's work to be done, obviously, and I have a different focus. But I also think that the snippetization of what Peterson is saying and commentary on it is very, very troubling and problematic. It's not any individual's responsibility. But as we know of avalanches, no single snowflake will ever take responsibility. And yet we need a lot of them, right? And in order to create avalanches. And so it's a bit of a tricky issue. And it's very difficult for any human being to go through all of the content that's being created and actually create a reasonable view. But that's why we need the universities to be healed, so that there can be people who are protected by tenure, who actually can spend the time to get a larger comprehensive view of things and speak what they have to say about it, even if they're wrong, and do it scientifically, right? Because if we lose that, the progress that humanity has made is in big trouble, and it looks like we are on the cusp of losing it. So one particular person that I think you might want to follow up with is Gad Sad. He's a very good commentator in this space, and there's just a lot to be talked about there. But one of the problems is very, very clearly outlined in Maps of Meaning, which is that you can only have a perspective that's as wide as what's in your existing episodic memory, and then how exactly you get things punched in there is, going to rely on the goals that you set, how that they're premised upon, based upon your existing competence, and then how that you actually follow through, follow forward, and deal with the unknown. And one of the problems that so many people have is that they're just simply petrified, and they have the cold heart of the evil Dr. Forget gnawing at their soul, and that holds them in place from taking action when the only thing that will help you is taking action. So you got to move. You got to move. All right. Thanks for all this, Kyle and Alan and everybody who's joining us. If you're just joining us now, hit that thumbs up. Let me know in the chat where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking. Let's look at this a little bit because I think it's a very interesting story and we should get some specific details going on here. So let's see here. Desperate housewife star Felicity Huffman is among more than 40 people charged in a U.S. college cheating scam, according to unsealed court records. The alleged scheme involved helping students cheat on entrance exams, as well as getting non-athletic students admitted on fake athletic scholarships. Elite schools, Yale, Stanford, and Georgetown, were among the destination universities. There was no suggestion that the schools were involved in wrongdoing. Who was part of the alleged scam? The defendants are largely wealthy and also include CEOs of major companies. All right, so here's the thing. If you're a largely wealthy and CEO type person of a major company, invest in memory training for your kids. Invest in it for yourself, and then do memory activities with your children. Wouldn't that make sense? Oh, yes, indeed it would. In fact, it would make too much sense, right? Because this is the number one advantage both you as a parent and your children can get, which would be absolutely fantastic for the whole family, right? That's very important. By the way, this is a BBC article, and I should have put the link in the in the description box, but perhaps we will. Anyway, this is very, very important. Even if you're not wealthy, invest in it anyway. Look, if you're going to send your kids to university or college, you're going to pay a lot of money, right? So why not get a return on investment that's bigger, faster, more impactful when they actually know how to learn and they know how to remember and they know how to do it in ways that are easy, effective, efficient, and fun? Get some memory training for your kids and they will automatically do better. We know that rote learning will never really do better than 44% accuracy of recall. Now, you might be thinking, well, 44 doesn't sound too bad to me, but that's in a scientific laboratory, right? And in real life, it's way, way down, I'm sure, in ways that we can't study. Also, those studies are also like they're studying particular kinds of information. And so we don't really know that much about how rote learning plays out in real life. We just we don't have like scientific findings, but we just have things like, for example, my own PhD. Do you know that the year that I graduated from my PhD, only 13% of Canadians actually finished their program? That's insanely low. That's insanely low. It's sickening to the stomach that so many people who entered a graduate program the same year that I did completely failed to finish. Now, fail is not really a nice word there. Sometimes life happens. I remember somebody in particular having to leave for a health reason, for example, and so on. I mean, life happens. But still, that's a lot of life happening to a lot of people. And I remember a guy, too. It just breaks my heart. He was one of the smartest people I ever saw. We used to go to the same campus pub all the time, and he would lecture forever. All his students loved him. They would come after the seminars that he was giving, and he was a graduate student as well. And he was basically, the professor's right hand man to the nth degree, and people would just listen to him, hang out with him, and so forth. That dude never finished his PhD. He left his writing of the dissertation forever and a day until they finally said, "Look, you're 9 years into this thing. You are no, I think it was 9 years. You're no longer eligible to even complete." Last I heard about that guy, he's working at Baskin Robbins. This absolute monster of knowledge about Shakespeare in this case, and many, many other things. Scooping ice cream. So, would memory techniques have helped him? I don't know. But we've got to just look at the stats here, right? Um, it is astonishing how many people drop out, how many fail. And it's not always a memory issue. I remember my first, no, it was my third time, sorry, my third time teaching as a TA, they call it. So teaching the seminars, like this guy, his name was Jeremy, by the way. He or I remember the third year being absolutely astonished what a negative note this professor started the course on. It was really scary, and it was the first time that I ever myself lectured in front of what must have been 550 people, which was awesome and fun, and a great way to practice my memory, just direct out of my head. But that first day, what she said to that room, which at that time was way more, it was probably more like 800 people in that lecture hall. She said, "Most of you will fail this course. Most of you will not even be here for the first exam. And you have to really, really think about whether, you've got the right stuff," like this kind of speech. And I just thought, why the hell would you tell that to these people? First of all, even if it's true, you don't know which of the people you just told are now going to drop out precisely because of what you said, right? Because you've implanted an idea when they could have perfectly capably on their own gone out and done fine, and or gone out and failed, but they didn't need you to give a preview of their failure, even if it's true, even if the 80-20 rule always plays out that way, blah 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 blah, and I've seen it play out that way. I would never say that to anybody. That is absolutely garbage. So sometimes it's not a memory issue, sometimes it's a culture issue, an atmosphere issue, and so on, but it makes me sick to my stomach. And one of the problems is that people just don't remember what it is that they're learning. So the whole point here is that something about being able to remember is just a defense mechanism that helps you filter out some of the garbage that people say, some of the discouraging things that people say, because well, I don't like this course very much, I don't like this professor very much, but I am going to pass anyway because I have a brain of steel, right? And so you can put up with all this stuff. And that's kind of like the fighter pilot attitude I had a lot of the time. Because I didn't care what the professor was like or anything like that. I didn't require myself to like them. I just knew that I could learn and get through and pass one way or the other. All right, so let's check in with the chat here before we carry on with this article. If you're just joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and let's rock and roll. All right, so Alan says, yes, it's all over the news in the US here. Negative suggestions. Yeah, negative suggestions are not that great. Alan, I don't really know that much about your NLP background. Love to hear more about that sometime. I think I might agree over there. I think I saw it the other day. I actually don't think that I did. I did see it, but it's been so long since I did any practice that I wouldn't really claim that has any relevance anymore. But I've kind of gotten more interested in it recently. I wonder if you have any suggestions for like some great new books, like 2018 books that might update me from the Grinder and Bandler days and so forth. What was another guy? Tad James, I think, was a guy I read. If you have time and as time and memory allow, I'd love to hear more. So Kyle asks, what is the number one study habit tip aside from memory palaces you recommend so people don't have to cheat? Oh, okay. Well, great question. Thanks for that. I have 21 of them on the blog if you'd like a link. But one of them is really to learn how to pre-read, to learn how to prime your mind for reading. And so very briefly what that looks like. And so many students don't do this, and you can tell that they don't do it because of how that they just basically generally talk about books and so forth. But you can take a book like Rest, for example, and read all of this before you do anything else, and read this before you do anything else. What is falling out of here? Oh, look. So I got this book from Leaderbox, which was a cool thing. I spent a year with Leaderbox from Michael Hyatt. So right, that's falling out of there. And read all this. Now, after I do all that stuff, what I do, let me take this dust jacket off. What I do is then I go to the back of the book and I will find the index and I will go through the index. Maybe not always every time, like line for line, but I'm just going to go through it. And I'm going to say, Thomas Hobbes, great. And Darwin, okay. And I'm priming my mind. Eisenhower, oh, that looks interesting. Jack Nicklaus, okay. So Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, Rodin, Alan Turing, and I'm just getting a sense here. Now, why do this? Oh, Eugene, Billy Wilder, sorry, yeah. Why do this? Well, it's giving you little flag posts. It's priming your mind. You're getting a preview. It's like when you're skiing down a hill, right? You might never have skied down the hill before, but there's something about the second time you ski down the hill because you have seen where all the flags are, right? And now, when you're reading a book, without that, you have none of that. But an index is a great opportunity to do that. And also, depending how the bibliography is set up, this one has a bibliographic essay, which I don't like as much. But just to go through there, see what books are being referenced. And sometimes I select in advance. Just for example, this isn't true in this case, but Bridget Schulte has written Overwhelmed, Work, Love, and Play When No One Has the Time. I might say, okay, that is something I'm going to look up, and so on. And just then, generally, I sometimes read the acknowledgments, which can be quite huge. Like, for example, I just mentioned Gad Sad, and I remember reading a Gad Sad book, and he was thanking Barbara Oakley. I was like, hey, I know Barbara Oakley. She's been on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. Maybe she could introduce me to Gad Sad. Now, that's not necessarily what you would be thinking in terms of study, but you might have these connections. Like, oh, this person is thanking, I don't know, some other scholar that you've read. So now in your mind, you make a connection. Even if none of that comes up, read it anyway, because then the next book you do it, you might start to see this hidden web of people interconnected, which is a great study tip. Because here's the thing. There is the structure of an individual book, then there's the structure of the world of the author of the book, and then there's the structure of the author's connections above the book, university they belong to, etc., etc. The more you know that sort of stuff over the long term and you embed all that in your knowledge, the more you have a view outside of a view outside of a view, and it's really like Russian dolls. And it's absolutely beautiful what can happen for you when you have that Russian doll of knowledge effect. Then the other thing is the colophon page is amazing to study. 2016, this book, you might memorize that date. Here's something I like to do. I go, okay, so 2016, where was I in the world? I was in New York City. I don't know that Sunshine came out that year, but I remember seeing Sunshine in New York City. And then I'm going to start to think, okay, so yeah, those could be some great bridging figures there. And then I'll read the actual chapters, but I'm already starting to think of like my tools for memorizing things. Read the chapters, then I'll often read the conclusion first, right? Because I want to see how did the author get to, like, what was the big point, and how did the author get to the big point, and then I might just read the chapters that are interesting to me. So the chapter on sleep, well, this book is called Rest, so I'll probably save that one for later. But walking, what the heck does walking have to do with rest? Isn't that exercise? So read that chapter first, and so on. So those are some tips. And then I would read the introduction and then plow forward in either linear order or skipping around, reading chapters out of order, etc. And if you're in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass, you'll know some of that stuff from there, but then you'll see how to link all that rapidly, easily, effectively through some special techniques. And if you go back through the chat, you'll see Eric mentioned something there. That might be a little tip for you. Anyway, I hope that answers your question. Boom, 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 doom, 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 doom. So yeah, that was a great one, Kyle. And let me know if you have any more information that you'd like to dive into. So, Crone Woman Walking says, I love this topic. Good to see you. Thanks for saying hello. And you're still surprised by the revelation? Yeah, it's crazy. Alan says, Master Practitioner NLP of Colorado. Awesome, awesome. So mine was with, excuse me, my throat is getting a little dry here. It was with Will Horton in Toronto, but he's a traveling sort of teacher, and it was with the National Guild of Hypnotists, essentially. Um, and that was wonderful. And through Ontario Hypnosis Center, more specifically. So great, great, great. Thank you. I look forward to your email. Aries Cosmos, good to see you. Thanks for saying hello. Yes, they do that in engineering classes, and then they weed people out. It's all about tests, GPA, and money for both students and teachers. Yeah, I remember uh, this change when I was in university to this bums and seats policy, they started calling it. And the idea that professors had to be sexy. I just, I thought that was the weirdest thing. I don't care if the professor is appealing in any way whatsoever. I just, like, obviously it helps if they're a great lecturer, but some people who are just really, really knowledgeable are not good lecturers, right? They're not interesting, they're not engaging, they're not entertaining, etc., etc. Who cares, you know? Why only have people who keep students bums in seats and so forth? Really doesn't make any sense. Boom, 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 boom. So, Alan says, like in the memory code, interconnection of info. Yeah, yeah. You're creating neural networks in your brain. You're strengthening the existing neural networks, and you're neural networking the neural networks. Very, very powerful and important to do. All right, let's carry on with this article a little bit. These parents are a catalog of wealth and privilege, said U.S. Attorney Andrew Lelling at a news conference about the. Why is my mouse not working here? There we go. About the investigation known as Operation Varsity Blues. Woohoo! I like that. On Tuesday. According to the charging documents, Miss Huffman made a charitable contribution of $15,000 to participate in the scheme on behalf of her eldest daughter. She allegedly arranged to use the scheme a second time for her younger daughter before deciding not to do so. Miss Huffman was charged with conspiracy to commit mail fraud and honest services mail fraud. She was secretly recorded during the scheme with a cooperating witness. The paper said the cooperating witness met Miss Huffman and her husband, the actor William H. Macy, at their Los Angeles home and explained the scam to them. The witness said the pair agreed to the plan. Mr. Macy was not indicted. Miss Huffman appeared in a Los Angeles court later on Tuesday and was released on $250,000 bail. The judge ordered the actress to restrict her travel to the continental U.S. Mr. Macy also attended court. And we won't watch that video. The actress, Lori Loughlin, best known for starring in the U.S. sitcom Full House, perhaps a memory palace, that one, was among those indicted. She has not yet been taken into custody. Miss Loughlin and her fashion designer husband, Mossimo Giannulli, who was also indicted, agreed to pay bribes totaling $500,000 in exchange for having their two daughters designated as recruits to the University of Southern California rowing team, the document said. Both their daughters are currently studying at USC. Federal prosecutors in Boston charged William Rick Singer, 58, with running the alleged scheme through his company Edge College and Career Network. Mr. Singer pleaded guilty on Tuesday in Boston federal court to charges including racketeering, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. He could see a maximum of 65 years in prison and over $1 million in fines. 65 years. So one of the things that people ask is, like, how would you memorize details of world events and so forth? So one of the things you might do there is, if you have your 00 to 99, right, then you'd just be like, oh, 65. So I can make an image for that, maybe pop it in a memory palace, and then, that'll help you call back that specific number rather than, yeah, it was a bunch of years or whatever. And then 1 million, right? Well, you could have a candle burning a big stack of money, or maybe the Joker from Batman. Remember that scene where he's lighting the money on fire? You know, you could have him with a candle, which would remind you of one, that sort of thing. Like that's how you can just encode as you go along. So he told the court, I am responsible. I put all the people in place. Local news site Mass Live reported. Mr. Singer will be sentenced in June. According to the FBI, athletic coaches at various institutions were also involved in the scheme, recommending the fraudulent applicants internally and pocketing bribes in return. The head women's football coach at Yale University was allegedly paid $400,000 to accept a student who did not even play the sport, and those parents gave Mr. Singer $1.2 million for arranging the bribe. This case is about the widening corruption of elite college admissions through the steady application of wealth combined with fraud, Mr. Lelling said. There can be no separate college admission for wealthy, and I will add there will not be a separate criminal justice system either. Amen to that, if only that were true. In all, 33 parents. So again, 33, get your thing going. You can make an image for that and you'll remember it better. So, 65 years in prison, was it? Yeah, and so on. $1 million fine. Now we got 33 parents. We can remember this. And I'm just selectively, randomly doing this, but you have to pick the things that you would want to memorize. And that's how you can do it. And then 13 athletic coaches and associates of Mr. Singer's business. So do I want that 13 number along with 33? Well, okay, why not? So there we go. That's the Hoover Dam, of course, or J. Edgar Hoover, or J. Edgar Hoover with a Hoover vacuum, and so on. All right. And actually, that's a cool one in the 00 to 99 because you could actually use the Hoover Dam as a memory palace to compile all those other things. So 33 is a mime. Now there can be a mime dancing along there, and maybe I could put my 65 and 1 million over there somewhere. Anyway, just a little thing people ask sometimes. Let's check in with our chat. If you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and also get subscribed to this channel if you're not already subscribed, and post any questions, thoughts you have. Rishi asks, where can you learn hypnosis? Well, I don't know where you are in the world, but there's a lot of places online where you can learn it. Think about the kind of hypnosis you'd like to learn. Please be more specific. Maybe Alan and I can give you more specific suggestions. Benjamin Fischel is in the house. Hey, Ben, good to see you. Hoping to see you soon here in Brisbane, if this is the same Ben that I know and love and admire and adore. Awesome. Good to have you here. Stefan is here. Says, great to hear your live stream again. Great to see you. Thanks for saying hello. And again, if you're joining us, hit that thumbs up. Let me know where you are in the world, what you're doing, what you're thinking, and questions, comments, all welcome. Let's see here. So how did the alleged scheme work? The documents detailed 2 alleged scams run by Mr. Singer's firm, Edge College and Career Network, cheating on college entrance exams and using connections with coaches at top schools to organize bribes while faking athletic credentials for students. Some parents took advantage of one, some took advantage of the other, and some took advantage of both, Mr. Lelling said. Parents, including Miss Huffman and Miss Loughlin, paid somewhere between several $1,000s and $6.5 million to Edge for its services, authorities said, earning Singer about $25 million between roughly 2011 and 2018. The firm reportedly instructed parents to claim their child had a disability which required extra time for exams. Oh my God. So this is really something that is annoying to me. And it's a little annoying personally. So here comes my episodic memory, perhaps my temperament, Alan. But yeah, I had problems with clinical depression, bipolar disorder, and particularly depression hit bad. And I remember having issues, and one of the doctors I was seeing, he said, you might alleviate some of your stress by applying for a scholarship for your disability. And I was just like, I don't even want to think about it as a disability, et cetera, et cetera. He's like, come on, man, look, this is nothing to be ashamed of, blah, 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 blah. And, go on. And your university certainly has them. Ask and it may help you just to take off some of the financial concern. So anyway, I went and found it, and lo and behold, there was a scholarship, and lo and behold, I applied for it, and lo and behold, I got it, and lo and behold, it actually helped take the edge off. And so it's a little bit annoying that there are people who, disability of any kind, are claiming such funds that when they don't have a disability, that is an egregious crime against the fact that real disability really does exist in real ways that really impact people. Often enough, those people don't have the courage to even go out, or they don't have the encouragement to have the courage to go out and find those opportunities to apply for them. They're often too sick to do so. You know, really not cool. That not cool at all. So one of the things, obviously, is to, if you have a disability, go and see what might be there, because I personally found that it actually really, really helped me. And there's another reason why it's good, is because later, when you want to apply for other scholarships, when you've won one scholarship, it's like ding, 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 this is a scholarship winner. You've got it on your CV now. And they're just like, okay, history of scholarships. I've had three now, and it was just amazing. And so when I went to, Germany, and I got the Mercator, which is a big deal from the Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft, wow, like I'm pretty sure that part of what helped that was a history of already getting scholarships. So whether you're going to go get a PhD or not or whatever, go get any scholarship that you can, not just for the short-term funding that it creates for you, but for the long-term profile of you as a winner, right? Go and do it. Don't have any kind of imposter syndrome. Don't talk yourself out of doing it. Go find any scholarship that you can find, disability or not. Just don't cheat, because you don't need to cheat. Use memory techniques. You will have the best GPA under the sun, and you will have all the confidence that you need in the world to take on the challenges of learning, and you'll be able to get scholarships, and those scholarships will pave the path for more scholarships in the future. It's just, you know, one thing beckons the other. It's just kind of, it's not always true, but it's often true that one thing paves the path for the next thing. Once you get the door open, it starts to roll. It starts to roll. If you got to get it started, right? All right. So yeah, that's something to pause upon for sure. That's not great. All right, let's check in with the chat here. It is the same Ben. All right, great to see you in Mexico. And you ask, do you find that distinct memory palaces? Oh, by the way, can we mention your site, Ben? Project Monkey Mind? I just did. So go check out Ben's site. Ben's been on the show, by the way. We did a great live stream, met some of you fine folks, and had a lot of fun. He's really got lots of great ideas, so check out his site. You asked, do you find that distinct memory palaces unconsciously help you come up with creative ideas for books, etc.? Like it naturally helps you think in systems? Been reading a bit about systems thinking. Yeah, absolutely. And the distinction about meaning unrelated fields, I get you. Absolutely, absolutely. And in the master class, in the master plan course, I talk about this effect, and I talk about how to deliberately create it, and why and how the techniques will create it for you, but how to accelerate the process of this. Because here's the thing: you may not be an idea machine right now, but you can train yourself to become one. And memory techniques is one of the best ways to train yourself to become an idea machine. And I've talked to so many people who they thought they were not creative. They thought that they were absolutely just a lost case for any of this. They just get started. All of a sudden, they're just like idea machines. So while the evil Dr. Forget has his cold grip on your heart, it can be hard to figure out how to release yourself from it, how you're going to get some warmth going. But how do you start a fire? Well, you get a spark going, and then so if you're using memory techniques regularly, you're making ideas all the time. And even when you get skilled, like sometimes I'll feel a little rusty in the morning or whatever, like I'm doing these long Sanskrit projects now, and yeah, let me try and think of an example, like Kshetrajnam. I was just like, what the heck am I going to do for Kshetrajnam? But then I just stopped, pause, wait a second, I can come up with something. So I'm not going to say what all those images are, because if you can follow along, Kshet has something naturally that might come to mind, but we don't want to open ourselves to perjury or purge or whatever that word is I'm looking for here. We don't open ourselves to censorship. But there's that, and then like that word kshetra, and it'll take on other like morphological uh, forms, so to speak, like kashet kashetrashu, right? This is from the Bhagavad Gita, by the way, and these are all words that are sort of related to field, but it'll be like in the field, of the field, etc. Kshetra naho. I don't have the book with me to check. I'm just memorizing this now, and I'm just like nayo. Um, it's just like, what are we going to do for this? But then you just dive in, and then you figure it out, and it makes these connections. And then the cool thing is that when you're writing books, to be more specific to your thing, to your question, like so many ideas will come because you're just working on ideas all the time, and the more challenge you take on, the more easily ideas come. Like I was just corresponding with an old friend who just showed up to say happy birthday to me. It was my birthday a little while ago. I haven't heard from him for a couple of years. All of a sudden, this birthday thing comes in, and he's a great writer, a great writer. And we were talking about stuff, and I was talking about all the books that I've written and I never released because I don't really feel like being a novelist, but written all these short stories, written some novels. I think there's at least 3 in the can that could come out. And just 2 days ago, I started to write a new novel, and it's just like this amazing idea, and I've got all these ideas surrounding it, and and I've got 2 more books that I want to write following the new one. I have way more ideas than I have Anthony's to execute. So I'm waiting for them to clone us, so I can build some more of me. But it's just like the ideas come, and I know they're coming from the training of being an idea machine. So here's a simple thing that you can do. And I know you like journals and notebooks and all that sort of stuff, Ben, is try to get in the habit of writing down 10 ideas every day. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter whether they're good or bad. It's just the ideas, right? So if you're not using memory techniques, and you're not using this every day, you're not memorizing things every day, like 65 and 1 million, 65 years in prison and 1 million, or whatever it was there, and the 33 people who are in trouble here, and the additional 13, like if you're not doing that every day, as I tend to do, which helps with constant idea production, then you could just do it cold, do it hard in your journal, 10 ideas. And I have done this in the past many, many times. It's a lot of fun. And I remember the last time I did it, actually, there was this idea of like, what if you could take a zipper from your jeans and have the jeans zipper go all the way to the moon? Just totally stupid idea, right? But it's like cool, and it's an idea, and it's just like comes no matter what it is. Just start to write out these ideas, so you'll get that effect. But it won't necessarily get the effect of this interconnected weaving. So there, you want to practice writing and coming up with connections. So one of the things that I do when I'm writing my books is I have the Not Now folder. And the Not Now folder is all the ideas that come up from the writing of the individual book. And the editor, I told him, I said, look, of my current book that's going to come out sometime soon, maybe. We're not sure what I'm going to do with it yet, but I'm very excited to get it back from him. I just told him, I said, look, I feel like there's actually 3 different books in here, so maybe we can split some of them out or make a series or whatever. He's like, I'll watch out for it. But I said, ideally, I want these 3 books to be interwoven, but we shouldn't do that at the expense of like an experiment that's going to alienate the reader. We may want to strip one of them out. So there's that, but then there's just the other ideas for the book. So anyway, I got 2 new books that I already have ideas for that I want to write, and a novel that just came. And I'm kind of like curious what you guys all think about this novel idea, actually, because I'm not sure I want to actually write it, but I love the idea. And the idea is there may be a novel like this, but it's related to memory in a roundabout way. And it's kind of like, what if a memory story meets something like a zombie story? So it's following this character named Everett, who's a doctor. And one day, like when I write, I don't get too worried about the details. I just like dive in. What's the problem? What's the dilemma? What's the crisis? What's going to be this guy's ghost that's haunting him, and so forth, and just start to write. And anyway, so it starts off, he's meeting his mom at the airport, but his mom has a surprise. because his mom is with his grandma, and his grandmother died like a number of years ago. And he's just like, what the hell? And there's all this stuff where he's looking at her hands, and he's having these memories of being at her funeral and how her hand feels now, and these memories of his grandma, and now his grandma's back. But she's not the only one, because people who died are coming back. And then basically the idea is, it's kind of like a mathematical idea in some sense. I haven't worked it all out yet, but imagine that. Okay, so every day, so on day one, the people who died last year come back. On day two, the people who died from the last 2 years come back. On day three, the people who died from the 3 years period come back. And then it sort of like accelerates throughout the novel, so that at one point, all the people from the last decade come back on a single day. And then on another day, as it accelerates mathematically, I'm not a mathematician, but I was like, maybe I should talk to a mathematician to figure out this mathematical structure to guide the book, the plot. Then there's one day where an entire century of people come back on one day. Anyway, it's like sort of this idea of how would you deal with everybody coming back, but progressively, mathematically, according to some formula or something like this. And they would come back, and you'd have to deal with like some real tyrants coming back, but also some real great people. So, I don't know my history that well, but, some of the people who defeated the bad guys, they would come back before the bad guys came back because they survived the bad guys, right? And so the existing humans or the existing people and the people who come after the death of the people, or after the return of the dead people, they would be able to say, look, we see what's going on in the world. So we need to start strategizing with you because you beat them the last time, right? So how are we going to deal with it when they come back? It's got a kind of like Benjamin Button feeling, except for nobody's going to be regressing in age, but it has this thing of like the world regressing in age as people from the past show up. And we'll just dial back all the way to Adam, so to speak, which is a little reference to James Joyce, if you're following. Anyway, that's what I got so far. I have tons of ideas like these. I have notebooks filled with them. I was just looking through them. I got this novel I started to plot out about bears and how the bears are getting genetic injections that give them human characteristics, and it was obviously going to be called Bears with a Z. And then there was this other one that is like an adaptation of Elective Affinities by Goethe. Anyway, back to the chat. All right, so that was still on Ben's thing. Ben says, to follow up, not now folder, a very cool idea. I imagine it prevents shiny object syndrome mid-project. Yeah, exactly. And, I could just randomly go through here, and I'll just be like, oh, here we have military investigator of, a military investigator investigates food-related deaths. There are people who put sugar in everything, including beef, and they call up the treating doctor, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, the whole point is it's just like endless. Any page, there's just something. Andrew, who is a Navy SEAL, 10 years in the military total. He's addicted to computers, and the detective David, I'm just like, oh, look, there's even a drawing of this guy who is going to be this character. This is a novel I planned out called the the Blind Film Professor. They're just everywhere. So that you're right, exactly. Your point there, Ben, is this is my not now folder. And it's like, it is beautiful because it's also the not ever folder, and it's like every day I have this blind, shiny object syndrome, and I just put it in the not now folder, and I'm perfectly satisfied to never write any of these novels. Although I sometimes think maybe I should do this James Patterson thing and just, okay, I've had my fun. I've charted out this whole novel. Here's the plot. Here's like the guy's, his driving ambition. Here's his unconscious need that's in conflict with the driving ambition. Here's the ghost that's haunting him, the thing that happened in his past that he somehow has to overcome on his way to the battle. And in fact, that's the thing that helps him win the battle. And by the way, the dilemma is this: the crisis that forces him to take action after the period of delay is that. And then here is the gathering of allies. 1, 2, 3. Here's the visit to the underworld. Then here's the battle, and then here's the anticlimax before the end of the battle. Here's the self-revelation. Then we get into the resolution, and here, you write it. And so I could just be the guy who does the architecture. That'd be kind of cool. So if you're a novelist and you're listening to this and you like my ideas, reach out. Maybe we can jam. All right. So yeah. Let's check in here. Alan says, if you have at least a master's degree, look to the Milton Erickson Foundation of Phoenix for hypnosis. Otherwise, get NLP training. Great. So, Alan, would you suggest that people actually get NLP before hypnosis? I did it the other way. I got it. I got certification in hypnosis before I did NLP. Now, I know that there's a lot of overlap, and really the extent to which NLP is not hypnosis is questionable, but also the extent to which hypnosis is also questionable, right? So, that's interesting. Aries Cosmos says college is extremely hard with depression. Indeed. And life is extremely hard with depression. Depression is the disease that I don't think a lot of people even know they have when they think that life is hard, because life doesn't have to be as hard as it sometimes seems. And there can be some sort of depression going on that could be lifted by any number of means. And I hope to use some of my story to help as many people find what those means be. I don't necessarily know what they are for all people, and I'm not a doctor able to speak about it, but I'm quite confident, given my own experience, that that we want to be open to exploring a lot of things and finding doctors who can help balance out some of the contemporary chemical handcuffs with other ideas that we might explore with CBT and the like. And in some sense, a lot of what you can do with memory training is memorize CBT for yourself and really get solutions quickly. All right. Chrono Walking says, I'm going to meditate and come back to listen. I use neurobics to remember grocery prices and what goes into my cart. It helps me focus and stay off my phone. Awesome. Happy meditating. Look forward to seeing you when you're back. And yeah, that's great. That is a great neurobic exercise, memorizing grocery prices as you go through the store. And you could actually, now that I think about it, and now that you mention it, so that I can think about it, much appreciated. You can use the shopping cart as a kind of memory palace to practice spatial memory at the same time. December Maple says hello. Hey, December Maple, thanks for saying hello. If you're joining us, hit the thumbs up. Get subscribed to this channel if you aren't already. And let me know where you are in the world in the chat. Let's make this interactive and fun. And so far it has been. Thank you to everybody for being so active. I really love it. Sanket says, I'm having difficulties in deciding information. I don't have a problem recollecting the encoded info. What do you suggest I do to overcome this? Let me know more about what you're talking about there, Sanket. Please give an example. What do you mean deciding information? What information? What's the decision parameters that come up? What's the problem? And congratulations that you don't have a problem recalling the encoded info. That is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. But please do let me know what this deciding problem is and what the information is. Alan says NLP prepares you for hypnotic language patterns. Oh, yeah, okay, so I can see that. Very good. All right, while we're waiting for Sanket here, let's dive back into this crazy story. The firm reportedly instructed parents to claim their child had a disability, which required extra time for exams, which we looked at. The FBI said parents were then told to invent an excuse, such as a family wedding for the students to sit the entrance exams at specific facilities where staff had been bribed to turn a blind eye to cheating. Oh, there's even bribes to staff? Yikes. And there we get a sense of where in the world this is taking place. Georgetown, Stanford, Yale. Yikes. Even down in Texas. Wow. Someone working for the firm involved in the scandal either sat the exam for the students, gave students the answers, or corrected their answer papers, the FBI said. This is getting worse and worse. The Edge staff member who assisted in the cheating was briefed on exactly how well to perform in order not to raise suspicion that a child's scores had improved too much. So, this is interesting, right? Did the Edge invest in memory training for their staff so that they could remember all of this? Because, there's nothing worse than tracking what you may have lied about, right? I wonder if the Edge invested in that. In most cases, the students did not know their admission had been paid for with a bribe, but in several, the students were involved, officials added. Oh my. This is like some kind of crazy cult. The firm also allegedly created detailed fake athletics profiles for students, including photoshopping the faces of potential students onto pictures of athletes found online, allowing students to be recruited on athletic scholarships. How? What? They don't have an interview, so the person is actually there. They don't watch the athlete actually do the athleticism they claim to do. So this is a problem not just of these scammers, but this is a problem of the very fact that they would ever select an athlete they haven't seen with their very, very own eyes actually perform the athleticism in question. Talk about cutting corners in the exact place you don't want corners cut. So let's put some responsibility on the institutions that are doing that. That's terrible. That's not what sports is all about at all. Mr. Lelling said the case arose after authorities were tipped off by the target of an entirely different investigation. Wow, so there's another investigation. Let's check in with our chat before we get into the reaction here, but this is fascinating stuff. Okay, so Yogesh Servas is here in the house. Thanks for being here, Yogesh. Thanks for your question. Good to see you. You say, what is the solution on no number of familiar places? I used whatever 3040 was my place. Now what do I do if I need more places for memorizing things? Go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT, take the free course, fill out all the worksheets, and you'll find the answer there, and you'll get more memory palaces by doing that. If you're in the masterclass, go to the master plan, fill out all the material there, go to the exercises tab, and then you'll have many, many ways of coming up with more memory palaces. And for those of you who may have a copy of the memory connection, there's a very special exercise in here and a special MP3 that you can download that's only for readers of that book that you can listen to a demonstration of a very powerful exercise. So that's that. But thanks for that question, Yogesh, and definitely start with making sure you've taken that free course. And when I say take the free course, I mean from beginning to end. And that would be a very, very good thing to do. Because that's what taking a course is, right? Beginning to end. Ben says, ever thought about teaching memory methods through your novels? Off topic, but Jeffrey Martin, Rod Pennington did this to bring awareness to their Enlightenment research, was quite successful. Yeah, I sure seen they mentioned that. Like there are some other examples I can think of where in spirituality and self-help they've used stories, and even in business training books they sometimes do it through a story format. That is a good and compelling question. In some sense, James Heisig has done this in his mnemonics for Japanese and other Asian languages in a smaller sense. There's a guy named Timothy Moser too who does this in a sense with Spanish. Timothy's been on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast, so you might want to check that out. But that'd be interesting. Let me think about that. In the last novel I released is called Lucas Parks and the Download of Doom, and it does some of that, but it wasn't very successful. It was a successful novel in terms of the launch and the release and the reception, but I don't think it really successfully taught the memory techniques. But that's interesting. I'll think about that. I could imagine kind of like a Harry Potter sort of scenario where there's a school for mnemonic wizards, and in that school there's a mnemonist who memorizes information to create particularly bad outcomes. but most of the faculty are very, very good. And at some point, a young hero appears who has absolutely no confidence in his abilities. And by learning how to become a mnemonist, always tempted by the ability to use mnemonics for the wrong purpose, uh, he manages to come out on top and destroy the evil mnemonist. But actually, now that you mention it, I don't know why that I didn't instantly think about it. I already had a shiny new object to play with before I realized that I have started the story of Edgar the Elephant and the evil Dr. Forget. So I wrote this out, and it's in another notebook, but I started to write the story. And Elon Tusk has killed the mother of Edgar the Elephant. So this is Edgar here. And Edgar's mother, she was the last living elephantologist, and he came and he took her tusks, and froze them somehow and turned them into the heart of the evil Dr. Forget. And I haven't worked out all the details, but I sort of, by writing it, fell out of love with the story, but I love the character still. So I have done that. The thing is that writing good fiction is incredibly hard. So coming up with the plots and so forth are there, and I kind of have to find the story that I'm in love enough with to go through with the actual writing and even the plotting, because there's so many plot holes in my plot for the evil Dr. Forget here that and so many bizarre things, but they sometimes work themselves out over time. But the core idea is there. But in that case, the plot is particularly snarled. And part of the reason why is because it's what you're suggesting. It's like, have I thought of doing it for this outcome, for memory? And then that kind of, like, just stories for story's sake would be great. But then the thought of making stories for the sake of teaching memory, then it just kind of is like, well, am I the right guy for that? I don't know. But you've given me more. You put more wind in my sails. Thanks for that. All right. Sanket says, suppose I have to remember the sentence, supply of services during transportation of passengers. The image I have is of my dad wrestling John Cena and Jerry, refereeing the match on a train. I tend to remember the image, but I have difficulty in decoding it at a later point in time when I need the info. Okay, so what you're going to need to work on is, first of all, always make sure your memory palaces are tickety-boo, right? And then you need to think about what your recall pattern is. And then you need to think about, before you think about your recall pattern or at the same time, you need to think about the integrity of these images, right? So you have an image of your dad wrestling John Cena, I don't know who that is, and Jerry refereeing the match on a train. I don't know who any of these people are, so it's hard for me to get an image here of what you're talking about or why that would be the imagery there for you. But if I had to memorize supply of services during transportation of passengers, I'm already thinking about air supply, the band, services. I might be thinking of a serviceman, soldier, or whatever, something like that. Duration is often an image of a clock if I need to do something like during. Transportation, thinking of a train, maybe the Transporter movie series. And there's also a movie, Passengers. So I'm going to start to paint with that palette, perhaps in a memory palace. And then I'm going to need to, decode it quite quickly. And I'm going to need to test it, make sure that there's no issues. And then you just need to look at how are you doing sufficient recall, and are the images actually working to get it so that you can do enough recall to get it into long-term memory. Because if the images aren't helping you get it back, and your forgetting curve is real steep, then you got to work on the images. Or it can be that the memory palace isn't right. And it can be that you didn't create the memory palace right, or it can be that it's not the right memory palace. So there's lots of things to work on there in your practice. But difficulties in decoding almost always are difficulties in encoding, right? They're a sign that no matter how good you might feel that you are about encoding, there's encoding issues at play. And I would, for something like this, I would have to think, all right, so I was thinking about air supply and a serviceman, and then there was a transport train somehow involved. Oh, during, because of the clock, is it going to work, right? You got to work that out because there's a grammar of the imagery. And then the other thing, speaking of grammar of imagery, do you have the images in the order that's actually going to get it that way where you need it? Because sometimes it's not necessarily the grammar of the sentence is not necessarily the grammar of the images. So hope that helps. Alan says, got to sleep in Chicago. Good night, my friend. Thanks for being here. Lovely to have you. Great chat. Really appreciated it. Yogesh says, is the chain method, linking method, more efficient than the memory palace technique? Well, let me ask you this. What makes you think that the chain and linking method are not the memory palace technique? I think that they're a very weak form of the memory palace technique. Here's why. Anything that is linked to something is either left, right, up, down from the thing that it's linked to, maybe diagonal, right? So why wouldn't you place those relationships on a canvas so that you can better navigate the relationship of one to the other? So it's instantly more efficient because it has a canvas as opposed to floating in the air. Depends on the nature of the information, though. I'll sometimes do linking if I'm just rolling along and I don't really want to use a memory palace or whatever. But I think what the real game changer for most people is to understand that linking and the chain are just a weak form of the memory palace. But weak is relative to your practice, it's relative to the information, etc. And you can get to various points with it, so think about that. Yogesh also asks, why are you interested in learning a Sanskrit language? Well, thank you so much for noticing that and asking that. I really appreciate that. I was thinking about that a lot today, actually. What to do with my newfound passion, not so much for Sanskrit, but for Advaita Vedanta. What am I going to do with all this? So, well, I wrote a whole book about it. That'll be the explanation. But in brief, I'm very, very interested in it because of Ben, who's here today. And in the book, I talk about this call to adventure that Ben gave. Since we're talking about stories so much today, it was the classic sort of scene where Merlin appears and creates a call to adventure, and the hero either says yes or no. And in this case, I just said yes immediately. We didn't need a second call to adventure. I didn't need to go and see the farmhouse burnt to the ground before I said yes to my my Obi-Wan Kenobi here. And he just basically, said, here's the Force. And I was like, oh my God, the Force. What are we going to do? And then, so I did what my Merlin, Obi-Wan Kenobi type figure with a bit of Yoda mixed in told me to do, read a book. Then I did what the book told me to do, wove the magic spells together. And the book said, hey, memorize this Sanskrit. And I was like, come on, this magical fantasy stuff. But I did, and now I memorized a lot of it. And someone said, said my Sanskrit actually is pronounced not too poorly, which is very, very nice. And I really appreciate knowing that. And one of the things that I am hoping is to really see if I can get more knowledge about the language itself as a result of this, but I'm not yet dedicatedly learning it. Anyway, the main reason is from Ben, who's here today, or he was here. I don't know if he's still here. He gave me that. That's the reason why. But then as I got into it, I started to realize that this is the best tool I've ever had to replace mind wandering. Now, Alex Payne here in Rest defends mind wandering, and I think he's right to do so. He's not wrong. It's not a right or wrong thing. But when my mind is wandering, it's just like I catch myself now so often and I give it something better, which is the Sanskrit. And so now I have all of the 32 Ribhu Gita passages memorized. And it's really great. The first one is really great because as Gary Weber sort of frames it in Evolving Beyond Thought, it's like, how do my thoughts behave? Are they useful? And the actual Sanskrit means something different. It basically asks you to think about how, all these thoughts are an illusion. They're like a little boy out of control. And the idea that any of these thoughts, I think this is a later verse, but the idea that any of your thoughts are real is like the idea that there could be a sun from a barren woman. And it's really great. But it's just such a great tool to just be able to, you know, Chitameva Mahadosham, Chitameva Hi Balakaha, Chitameva Mahatmayam, Chitameva Mahanasa. It's such a great alternative to blah, 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 blah. And what Gary Weber talks about in Happiness Beyond Thought and Dancing Beyond Thought and Evolving Beyond Thought is very, very true, I've found, is that the what he calls self-referential internal narrative just starts to go down. And I have less and less and less of it. So one of the things that happens is that and he talks about this. I think he could. I think he could potentially stress this more in his works, but I'm going to stress it anyway in my own experience. I don't really know if it is his or not, but it seems to me, reading between the lines and even explicitly what he said, he's not talking about having no thoughts. He's talking about the difference between self-referential internal narrative and the pain and suffering that creates. The anarakam, which is in that line. I don't know if it's the proper grammatical iteration here, but it's a maha anarakam iritam is the great hell, right? The body, right? And the body, but the consciousness of the body is the great hell. And that happens through these internal narratives, self-referential internal narrative. But when you let that go and when you diminish it and you like James Schwartz uses this, you extrovert your mind to the outer world and you're not so longer thinking about yourself anymore, you're so free. You're so free from this tyranny of the self. And it's just great. It works. It is actual bliss. It's really wonderful. And I can see very, very much how something about potentially the Sanskrit language itself is involved because of the nature of the language. And I'm very interested in thinking about this in the context of the Katapayadi, perhaps, and the evolution of the major method or the major system that we use for memorizing numbers, because there's so many things in the major, like, one being T or D, and that T, D, and 6 is like ch, sh, j is all in the same part of the mouth, ch, sh, j, even 0, soft C, S, Z, 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 z. So there's like something there about the tongue touching different parts of the mouth and the actual sound that may fine-tune part of the brain, switch on different parts of the brain. We probably don't know enough about it. I don't have the budget yet to invest in the machines. Should have got a brain scan before I started all of this so we can do it before and after, but didn't. Sorry. But that's part of my fascination with it. Is it true that all of this is happening because of something about these sounds, sound and meaning, or form and content coming together, and bada bing, bada boom, razzmatazz, life is just so much better, shiny and new. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question. More coming in the new book. All right. Benjamin says, interesting ideas as always, Anthony. Much to discuss. We'll hopefully jump on the show soon. I hope so too. Thumbs up for Benjamin Fischel. Go check out Project Monkey Mind, and I know he's got some great stuff there for you. And can't wait to have you here. Yeah, come in the new studio, and we'll get some cool image behind us that you choose, and away we go. All right, Sanket says, thanks, Doc. Really appreciate your help. I will surely work on the things you've asked me to work on and keep you updated. Excellent, excellent. Please do. Can't wait to hear from you. Kyle says, I can encode information into images and make memory palace stations, but I can't link the two together. Like, I can see my couch and chair, but can't recall whether I put the image of Batman. Interesting. Okay, so, but I can't link the two together. What is the information we're talking about? Let me know, and let's be specific, because you're not memorizing Batman. You're using Batman or whatever it is. Think about it that way. And do you need to link them? Let's use a specific, though, rather than being abstract. And it's always best to use your example rather than mine. I can come up with all kinds of examples, but let's start with yours. And if you can't give a specific example, then I'll give one of my own. The problem with this particular beautiful art is that nobody gets to see inside of the head of another Nemesis. We can't do Inception and like enter each other's dreams or however that works. It'd be awesome if we could, though. Maybe we'd be able to learn more about it and help people learn more. about it. But while we're waiting for more details from Kyle, if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up, get subscribed to this channel. If you aren't already subscribed, let me know where you are in the world in the chat. Pop any comments or questions that you have. And let's look at the reaction here to this monster story of people who could just invest in memory training so they don't have to cheat. What's the reaction? Well, USC said it had fired 2 employees who were indicted in the alleged bribery case. Senior Associate Athletic Director Donna Heinel and water polo coach Jovan Vavik. Court documents say Mr. Vavik placed 2 students on his water polo team to help them get into the university and was paid $250,000. Miss Heinel also allegedly accepted bribes to facilitate admissions. USC is in the process of identifying any funds received by the university in connection with its alleged scheme. Additionally, the university is reviewing the admissions processes broadly to ensure that such actions do not occur going forward. Georgetown, Yale, UCLA, Wake Forest, and the University of Texas released similar statements acknowledging the investigation. On social media, many have expressed outrage over the alleged scam, pointing out that the U.S. college system is already biased in favor of wealthier white Americans. And others have noted that for the mega rich, it's easy to legally donate money to a school in order to receive admission. Okay, so more on this story. Oh, well, this is a pretty sad situation for many, many reasons. And my assessment really is that there's obviously some schools that are to blame in terms of, they're going to need to really rethink this whole thing about letting athletes come in who they've never seen perform to get rid of this photography situation or photoshopping situation. But man, think about this. The fact that they're making these decisions for photographs in the first place is not cool. It's not cool. That's really, really bad. And it's that's tragic and strange. But at the end of the day, who really takes the blame for this, right? Even if some of the students were involved, even if there's a company who made this possible, the real issue I think that we need to focus on here is that there's a core problem in a basic reality, which is that people are stressed out about getting degrees and having the best possible education to support those degrees so that those degrees have meaning, so that they have impact, so that they actually do something for the holder of the degrees. And so these are not just namby-pamby universities, but universities of reputation where it is generally felt that these people are making it possible for your education to be more worthy than some other places. And that's a normal desire, right? If you knew that it was possible, either through your own financial means and wherewithal, to get the best possible education, or you knew it was possible through a scholarship process to get the best education possible, or whatever means that there were there by working a job and saving up, etc., etc. If you knew that that was possible, wouldn't you want the best possible education? Well, of course. So this is understandable. But the idea of cheating your way to get there, when you don't have to cheat your way to get there, because you can stack the chips in your favor simply by being a good learner already, this is the real issue. And so people aren't focusing on the real distinguishing factor here. And the real distinguishing factor is very, very simple. It is that anybody who wants to learn how to learn better can. That performance translates into getting the scholarships, into getting accepted into the universities, into having a much better life, period, because you're an established learner. You're an established person who can not only just learn stuff and remember it, but translate that learned material into knowledge, into expertise that makes an impact and is noticed simply because you've got it. You've got the X factor. Because the X factor doesn't come from sitting in the university. The X factor doesn't come from having the degree, right? The X factor comes from your visible, noticeable, undeniable competence in the situations in which your competence is required, right? And where are you going to get that from? You're going to get that from Yale? You're going to get that from Harvard? You're going to get that from Oxford? No, 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 and 1,000 times no. You're going to get it from being the competent person. And you can get that from any university under the sun, provided it's half decent, right? And you can go on to do great things, provided that you have that competence and you have the passion that real deep relationships with that knowledge creates when you're that in tune with the topic of study. You, in essence, are so into it in your mind that you are the topic, right? So that's the real issue here. And I really have to stress that, innocent until proven guilty, and who knows what's going to come of this. But it's so clear to me that this is a call to all of us to invest in memory training. No matter how good you are, invest in more memory training because the benefits are just too amazing. And we can change our brain through information, how we think about information, and what we do with the information, what having this information enables us to do in ways that are positive for ourselves, in ways that are positive for the world, in ways that just make everything greater. And it gets greater and greater because of the training effect. And the more you know, the more you can know, and the more you're able to deal with the uncertainty that life just naturally has built in and be the hero to yourself that you need to be, because you're the only person who can be that hero to yourself. This is very, very important. So Kyle says, for body part, Gemellus superior. I imagine Batman, superhero, superior, eating jelly, Gemellus. I put this on my couch in an empty memory palace, but I forgot where I put it later. All right, so, I mean, did you forget where you put it, or did you forget the information? To what extent does it matter where you put it, if you can remember it? Or did you forget where you put it and what the information was, right? You shouldn't become reliant on the memory palace. You shouldn't necessarily need to know where it is. You just need the information. Lots of stuff I've memorized, I can tell you exactly where it was in a memory palace, and technically is, but there's lots of stuff too where I have no idea. Aham Brahma Asmi. I don't remember where that is in the memory palace. I don't need to. I remember where everything in the Ribhu Gita passages that I've memorized are, but other things, no idea. And I don't need to. I don't know where Sigmal is in German. I don't know where Ausweis is in German. I don't know where lots of stuff is in German, and it is not necessary. So I don't fully understand the issue yet, so please let me know more. But at the end of the day, forgetting where you put things is only a problem if you don't remember the information. Let's see. Stefan, thanks for these questions. Let's dive in as we're waiting for Kyle to clarify a bit more. Is it a good idea or not to have a memory palace with, for example, 25 stations? On every station, I'll place 10 objects to remember something that are connected. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, Stefan. Does it work? That's the question. If it works, then wow, sounds like a great idea. If you struggle with it and it's unwieldy and doesn't get you anywhere, then no, not a very good idea. Oh, let me see. You added some more things. So let me start again. Is it a good idea or not to have a memory palace with, for example, 25 stations? On every station, I'll place 10 objects to remember something that are connected and use the chain method for the 10 objects at every station. What? Well, I mean, how are you using the chain method there? How are you constructing your stations? The question is not is it a good idea or not, but did you put your idea into action and did it work? There's no memory palace police around here. Hold on, let me check. Are there any memory palace police here? Crickets. There's no one here. The good idea is good when you go and try it. And then you come back and say, Anthony, Magnetic Memory Method family, check out what I did. It worked. Or you say, yeah, I tried this thing and I can't really recommend it because it didn't work. Then we can jam on it. But you never have to ask anybody whether it's a good idea or not. It's good because you had this idea. Congratulations, you're a genius. That's something that's cool, right? Like you can just go out and do it. So you got a memory palace. It's got 25 stations. You want to put 10 pieces of information on every station, and you're going to use some sort of chain or link or whatever you're going to do. Like maybe, you're going to, part of that station is always going to have 1 is a gun down to 10 is a hen. You're somehow going to do this. I don't know how you'll do it. I don't know what your Mary Palaces look like, etc. Go for it. I mean, it's amazing. It's a really good idea. And there's versions of this in the magnetic Mary method training, particularly with bookcases, always indexed by some number. So 3 shelves, 5 shelves, 10 shelves, whatever, pick one. And I never thought, this is a very good idea. Good. I never thought, wait, we could actually have some kind of list that helps us there. So shelf 1 of the bookcase would be 1 is a gun, 2 is a shoe, 3 is a bee, 4 is a door, etc. This is a very promising idea. So it's good in concept. Is it good in execution? I don't know. We'll have to try it. Then the question is, what information is it good for? Is it good for lines of Sanskrit? Is it good for lines of poetry if we're memorizing song lyrics? Is it good for foreign language vocabulary? Is it good for numbers? Is it good for this? Like, we need to do that. And then the question is it good for you with that kind of information, or is it something that might be better for somebody else? So congratulations on your genius, but you want to go beyond good and evil, to quote Nietzsche in a weird way. It doesn't matter whether it's good or bad or not. What matters is, did you try it? Did you work it? Right? Because memory techniques don't work. We work the techniques, right? So, push-ups don't do the work. We do the push-ups, right? And then we get the result because we did it. Our brains somehow got our bodies to right? Same thing with memory. There's nothing about these people. I love it. Breaks my heart, but every time I see it, I just think, man, what are you thinking? I hope this works for me. Well, what is this? Like, where is this magical thing that somehow does something? No. You work the techniques. You work them. Like, a carpenter works the wood. So I think it's just a shift in your perspective. And I hope that helps you out. And thank you for the wonderful idea. That's amazing to go out and try. Now we can all go out and try it. Wonderful. And that's what I like about these live streams. So if you're just joining us, hit the thumbs up for Stefan. And get subscribed to this channel if you aren't already. And what else can I say? Enjoy this chat. Get involved. We got a lot of chats coming up here. Pop in yours if you got some. Questions, comments, etc., etc., etc. And we'll carry on. Yogesh says, as we know, music is essential for brain health, and you practice guitar well, and I don't have any music skill, but I also want to learn music. So what do you suggest for learning music? Great question. I'm actually thinking of doing a course all about that. So why don't we save that for then? But if you watch the last live stream and you just scan through and look for me with a bass, boom, in the last live stream, I gave you some ideas already, so you don't have to wait for the course. Al says, hey, Mr. Anthony, thanks for this live stream. I have a question about multiple choice exams. How do you remember a ton of Q&A pairs in a short amount of time? I find it difficult using memory palaces. So here's the question, Al, or here's the answer, Al. Figure out how to use memory palaces so that it's not difficult. That's the first thing. And then how realistic is it that you're going to, memorize a ton of Q&A pairs relative to how realistic it is to have a broad and focused set of knowledge of what's going to be there, so you don't have to memorize information in pairs. You're able to use recognition, cross-index it with your existing knowledge, and then answer correctly. This is very, very important to understand. Those tests are rigged against you. They are tricky. Doesn't matter how smart you are. Doesn't matter if you've memorized Q&A pairs. They are tricky. I have gone and I have had to go to the department and say, this question that I was marked wrong on is false and it's unethical and it should not be graded this way. And more than not being graded this way, it should never be asked this way, because this is not what knowledge is about. This is blatantly wrong. So what's the better thing to do is to actually be able to answer those Q&As to the best of your ability by understanding how multiple choice questions actually work, how they're rigged against you, how they're fraudulent in almost every way, and be prepared to excel anyway, and then go and defend your answers, because a lot of the times what they say is wrong is absolute garbage, and what you said was right is very good. So I developed this little technique that saved my skin many, many times when I had to face these in university. And I'm so glad when I got to graduate school, they didn't do that anymore, because it was a BA thing and it never appeared in my graduate work. Maybe in others it does. But they were gone. I never did, to my knowledge, except for when I got to like do my German certification. Then I had, this kind of tick the box questions later. And I got my, um, you know, other tests there, where they feel that you have enough knowledge of how the German system works. Integrieren. Integrationskurs. All right, so what I did is I would I would put an arrow on the question that was right, and then I would put an arrow and say, please turn over, PTO. And then in the back, I would say, this question is not well constructed. The answer really is this. And then I would just write it out. And then if I didn't know, I would also do this arrow. And on the back, or on a separate piece of paper, I would write out what I did know that was closest and most relevant to this. And then I would take it to the examiner myself, and I would say, this is the way that I'm going to answer this. And I wish that, we had better than Nokia phones when I was in university, but I would have taken a photograph of this and had my record of it. But I never had a problem with multiple choice after that. Never needed to go and wrestle with the department itself to say, look, this is nonsense. Because I tried this. I tried memorizing Q&A pairs. I used to go to the previous exams and study them and so forth. It just doesn't work. It didn't work for me. So I'm not saying you can't do it. I just don't think it's the right lever to pull. Now, to be fair, it's been a long time since that. I got my BA, 2001, I guess. 2002 was probably best to say. So it's been a while. But in any case, that's what I have to say about that. Kyle says, I can recall the info, but I thought I was doing my memory palaces wrong because I couldn't recall Batman back to my couch. I see encoding is important and the palace is just an organizational tool. Yes, it is. It's not meant to be something that you hold on to information forever. You just need the information. And how you get things into, random access memory, so to speak, so you don't have to go to the memory palace first, is usually through the big five. So that's all covered in the masterclass, and definitely give it a try in that context, following through with the big five. Then you won't need the memory palace. The memory palace is just a short interim. Stefan says, I'll start and try it out, and I'll let you know. Okay, good, great, can't wait. Cronewoman Walking says, I'm back. PAO inspiration stopped at 80, so I'm reviewing everything I have. I felt that way about exams ever since I took the boards for my RN. Great. Well, thanks for sharing both of those things. And I'm glad I'm not alone in my assessment of multiple choice exams. But that's one survival tool that I had, was I just wrote my own answers the way I wanted to write them. And if I had to, I would have fought tooth and nail for it. Because it's not an ethical examination method. And there's a number of reasons why that they do it that way that have nothing to do with supporting student success. Nothing at all. Forgive me as I pour some more water from my handy magnetic water cooker. I like that term, water cooker. And in Chinese, this water we call Bai Kai Shui. All right. So, what else are we going to talk about today? I think we pretty much covered this issue. To reiterate the key, big, major point, my major message is that people can take a wonderful, wonderful responsibility for themselves, for their students, in their families, and they can make memory training so you don't have to cheat. You don't have to cheat. You can be your best possible self, and you can pay that forward through life, and just look at the real issue here. Stop, pause, reflect, own the real issue and do something about it. Do something about it locally. Do something about it as far spread as you possibly can. Make a YouTube video about it if you got a YouTube channel. Make a blog post about it if you got a blog post, or a blog. If you have those things, or just talk about it and educate people that there is this ancient tradition, it's thousands of years old, that involve memory techniques that allow you to learn and remember anything that you want as quickly as you want to, and to have greater permanence of that information, if not total permanence of that information. And you're able to really make learning so much more enjoyable, so much more fun, with greater confidence, with greater hope, with greater long-term benefits because of the brain health that comes. And who doesn't want more brain health, especially when our brains are more under attack than ever? It's so hard to buy healthy food these days without poisoning yourself just because you can't anymore, right? It's so difficult to get away from digital media because you just have to survive, have a certain digital dementia and digital amnesia in your life. So now you got to fortify your brain through some kind of brain fitness. You've got to, or you're going to lose. You're going to lose. And there are going to be people, there already are people who are at the absolute point of controlling many, many others simply because they protect themselves from exposure to the media. And I know of a case in particular of a person who still, and he's a very successful entrepreneur, who still insists on receiving faxes and sending faxes, and he doesn't do any of this stuff. And I can see why. And I think there's a lot of people like that who see the system for what it is from the outside. They limit their digital contact because they see what it's doing to people, and they succeed better as a result, just simply because their brains are not wired to particular kinds of dopamine that dumb you down and make you focus on information that is absolutely not relevant to anything in life. And I want to be very cautious and sensitive about not making that mistake myself by jumping on something like this. But I happened to see it, and I instantly saw that there's an issue here that we all need to pay attention to, and I wanted to do my part as carefully and tactfully as possible, recognizing that there is a judicial process and people are innocent until proven guilty. But, this is something that is tragic in the extreme that it happened at all, but it's an opportunity to really own the problem because all of us are part of the problem. So there's a link in the description below to a blog post and a podcast that I recorded some time ago about why memory techniques are not taught in school, that I think also gets to the core of the real problem here, the real problem we all got to own and we got to do something about. There's also some interviews down in the description with parents who have children who use memory techniques, and you're going to want to listen to that and be inspired by it and put it into action. Greg, my man, it's going great. Great to have you here. How is it going with you? Let us know if you have any questions, comments, concerns, and we're going to wrap up, but if you're still here and you want to stick around, you want to ask any questions or comments, let's do a quick look through my my mailbox, or perhaps you let me know. Would you like mailbox, or would you rather I read a bit of the new book that is currently with the editor? Let me know in the chat. I'm just going to look through and see what I got here. This is your call. You can let me know, and we'll see if we have any well, we got a question right here. Someone is saying, what are my solutions when I have a limited number of memory palaces to use for memory palace, or for memorization? Great question. And you got a number of solutions. The first solution is the most obvious one, is to take the free course. Take it seriously, diligently. magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. Very, very important. Very, very important to take that, because it's going to show you exactly how to come up with at least what I think is the bare minimum of amount of palaces that you want, or at least unlock the road towards getting them. So that's the number one solution. And then from there, it's like listen to the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. We talk about unlocking more memory palaces all the time. Join these live streams. We talk about doing this all the time. Exercises. There's oodles of exercises in the history. The thing is it's not about consuming the information. It's about translating your consumption of information into action. And one of the problems we have is the snippetization of content, making it shorter and shorter and shorter, which is as annoying as all, some nasty word, because why would people ever think that they could learn something that they haven't gone through from beginning to end? Well, because we're being trained to graze. It's called dual path readership now, how people actually read through articles. One of the reasons why I read this article from beginning to end was just to demonstrate reading through articles from beginning to end, and paused and say, well, we could memorize, 65 years in prison, $1 million fine, for example, 33 people indicted, and another 13 potentially, like all this stuff. I didn't really put in as much memorization as I could, but reading from top to bottom is a really useful thing to do, don't you think? And most people aren't doing it because of dual path readership. We're being trained to read that way. The internet writers have changed what writing is in order to actually make dual path readership a process that actually happens for so many people. So we got to train ourselves to not read that way. How do we do it? Well, one of the things, I love this guy on the internet, Tim Pool. He just reads through articles, right? And he's like, because people aren't reading them anymore. So now you got to get a guy on the internet to read for you, right? Which is fine in a way. It's a cultural shift, but it's very, very difficult. I find it difficult to read articles online unless I read out loud because of how the writing style has changed. But there's another strategy, and it's a very beautiful one. It's called books. Read them. And get in touch if you want to be considered a very special person. I have a couple of these left. You could get one. I'll send it to you. I'll figure out how to get it to you if you want one. The Memory Connection, a step-by-step guide to memory improvement. That lasts. Special for you if you want one, for being here. I don't really offer it that often because I just don't, and there's not that many left. But if you want one, get in touch. But yeah, reading books, that helps solve that problem. And printing out articles from the internet, that solves that problem. Let me demonstrate for you how to do that. It's called a printer. Very, very beautiful. So I want to read all this stuff, but I know that I'm not going to read online. And so, effects of product placement in online games on brand memory, a perspective of the limited capacity model of attention. I'm going to read this because it's on paper. I don't have to suffer the dual path readership problem. Concentration and mnemonic training in elderly subjects with memory complaints, a study of combined therapy and order effects. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Oh, and I'm really excited about this one. The influence of vagus nerve stimulation on memory. Wow. So print stuff out that you want to read. I know it sounds like common sense, but common sense is not so common. Whew, sweaty. It's so hot in Australia. You'd think that it was summer, but it's actually fall. All right, Canadians on ice. All right, so Greg says, not bad, just want to let you know you've had an amazing impact on my life recently. I was contemplating suicide when I came across your videos and streams. Knowing someone cares so much helps me. That's awesome, Greg. Thanks for sharing that. And I've been there, man. I've actually been worse than contemplating suicide. I've had basically suicidal ideation to the point of impulses. And so why don't we read that part of my book? Let me dig it out. Let me see. It's going to take a second. Please pop in your chats, comments, questions that you may have while I do this. I wasn't planning on it. Just a spontaneous thing for you all. And I got to get the other computer rocking here. But for Greg, I think this might help you. And it might interest you all to have a little bit of this. Because one of the things and one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about teaching memory techniques and memory training is because they saved my life. And it also helped me ultimately reduce and almost practically eliminate. Like there's still some residual issues here, but it's helped me reframe everything, think about it differently. It's essentially harm OCD, it's called. and it just like scrubbed it out of my mind to the smallest little thing. And so I'm really passionate about teaching memory techniques to others, whether they have these problems or not, because they saved my life. And I know they can save other people's lives as well. And that's one of the things that drives me to get up and do all of this day in and day out. Can't stop because it is life saving. So I really appreciate you sharing that, Greg. And it takes courage to share these things, actually. It's not easy. Um, so let's see here. I'm going to search up this document. And here we go, I think. I have been invited to the developmental edit of my own book. Woo! That's exciting. All right. Oh, but wait a second. This is not the version that has been edited. This is some other link. But we'll just go with this one. His version is better, but we'll just go with the one that I found so we don't have to spend much time. No, I want to find his. Might as well go with the good one, right? Since that I know I can find it. If you'll just bear with me, pop in any questions, chat that you have, whatever you want to say. And there's another. Oh, I think this is it. Trial developmental edit introduction. All right. So this is before that I. No, this is the same thing. Wait a second. Well, okay. Anyway, I'm just going to go with this. Let's check in our chat before we get started, though. Say hello to people who have shown up. Amsal is here. Hello, Amsal. Good to see you. Nick is here. Hello, Nick. Great to meet you. Harry is here. Let's hear some of your new book, please. All right, yeah. Bruntiver for strategy, if I remember correctly. It's been a while. Let me get this hair out of my face. Whew. It's hot in here. It's a hot day. Come to Australia, everybody. Visit. It's beautiful. Oh, it's not my ego. It's actually just bothering my concentration. I really don't care that much about appearances, as you can tell. But it's bothering my concentration to have that hair there. All right. Cronewoman says, been there too, Greg. Oh, thanks for also opening up. I mean, it does take courage, and if we can support each other, I think that's one of the best things we can do. Greg says, in my youth, I was molested, which scarred me. One of my experiences that I have forgone was when I was in the bathroom one day, I looked at my toothbrush and remembered what went in me as a child. I hope no one has to go through what I did. I will always spread awareness about these mental problems to hopefully prevent one day. Well, sorry that happened to you, Greg, but you know, the ultimate redemption is to help others, right? It's called karma yoga. It is helping others without any regard for the self, and to put it out there, regardless of the outcome. So that's very admirable. And I don't know if you saw Leaving Neverland yet, but I highly recommend it. It might be tough. It was tough for anybody to watch. It was tough for me to watch. You know, I'm interested in music generally and period across the board. And I remember Michael Jackson very much when I was a kid, and you know, just generally followed that sort of stuff as it was happening. But there's some huge things that come out of that are pretty intense. And I've been thinking about it a lot lately. And I can't really say that I went through anything extreme in that in my own childhood, but I have this one lingering memory of something a little bit dicey. That just comes back to me from time to time. And anyway, we don't need to get into it, but it may be that it may have been part of the issues. Actually, there's two things now that I think about it. But the point is that this stuff is a lot more common than people think, and I think that repressed memory around it is a lot more common. And in any case, in my case, it was never in the family or anything, but it was just the other people. But we gotta get out the stories, and we can help heal each other for sure just by sharing. So I appreciate that, everybody who wants to open up here about those things. Reclaiming Life is in the house. Good to see you. How do we go about getting a copy of the memory connection that you mentioned? Thanks for asking about that. So this is going to be by request only because it's going to take a bit of work to get it to you. but I can share with you the information about ordering one, and I'll get it to you right away. Um, but I don't have that many copies left, and I'm not going to print it again. So if you want to get it, please do. There's some cool things there, but just email me directly, and I will send you that. Serious inquiries only. Let's put it that way. And yeah, there won't be a reprint of it. Crone Woman says, me also, Greg. The places where it happened are some of my most powerful memory palaces. That's intense. Also, how you use smells and odors to remember things. Yeah, like I have a video back in the day on the YouTube channel about dealing with negative places, and it wasn't any kind of abuse in this sense. But when I had the manic depression first, like over the top, had to be hospitalized for 3 months scenario, some really crazy things happened there. Like the patients or the medical professionals, they're not really watching what some of the patients do, and there's a lot of bizarre sexuality that goes on because manic depression people, when they're manic, like it's crazy. So Bedlam is a place where there's a bunch of manic people who are completely over the top sexualized, and they're not properly policed. And because of the inebriation of being manic and not really fully aware of yourself and what you're doing and why you're doing it, mistakes are made that haunt you for a long time when you come down. And they don't police it enough. Maybe they can't. I don't know. I've let go of those things, but it's a different relation. It's a different issue, but it's not unrelated. Anyway, I didn't write about any of that stuff in my book, but it's coming to mind now that we think about it. But on this video, I talk about this memory palace and efforts that I've done, and even some related memory palaces that aren't in the hospital, but when they let me out, and who they let me out with because of essentially a bedlam marriage, symbolic marriage, of course, but like they should be doing something to intervene on people who are completely out of their minds and like forming romances in the hospital, and then they're going to release you, and they're going to, you're not going home, you're going to go, and they know that you're going to go and live with this. It's like, what are they thinking? And all the time they're indoctrinating you on how that you're going to be a person who has this disease for the rest of your life. And they're letting you go with another person who they've indoctrinated is going to have this disease because it's mutual support. I mean, what kind of madness is this? They're crazier than we were. Anyway, I can laugh about it now, but there are many, many years where I suffered because of the consequences of the decisions that those medical professionals made in terms of them knowing what was going to happen when I was released and even releasing me into the care of whatever. Anyway, all in good fun at the end of the day, I suppose. No, it wasn't fun at all. But whatever. Okay, so let's see here. Chrono Walking says, I think it is my superpower, my memory. It is the path of the Superman Jungian journey. Indeed, indeed. That's what we got to do with it, right? We've got to, at some level, embrace it. I mean, I'm telling jokes about this. I'm not really getting into specifics, but it's partly because what helped me get over it was just to embrace it. It's just this mad chapter in life. Could I change it? No, can't change it. And even like other relationships I've had in my life that had nothing to do with this, like they had equally crazy things going on. And there's a part in healing from a relationship where you just have to really love that person for all their faults. And even better, you got to love yourself because you were part of the dance too. And you just have to be really grateful and thankful that someone entered your life. And for all the madness and the pain and the suffering and so forth, you caused them pain too. And if you can actually love yourself as the causer of their pain, regardless, and just acknowledge that you caused them pain, like we all have caca on our knees. We all do. There's no getting around that. And if you just accept that and see that and realize the horror of what you created for others, that can help you heal. You can help. My own dissertation helped me heal because that's what I wrote about. that was my final assessment of friendship, is that friendship is this thing where we are often monsters to our friends, and I call it hypothetical consent, which is that it's kind of a I kind of use a purposeful tautology, right? So if you don't know what a tautology is, it's a circular argument, and Tigger is the great example I used to give when I taught critical thinking. The wonderful thing about Tiggers is that Tiggers are wonderful things, right? Like that's a circular argument. How could that be logical, right? The reason why Tiggers are wonderful is because Tiggers are wonderful things. Well, there's a tautology in friendship, actually, and this is what my dissertation concluded on. Is what my whole dissertation was about. Is that uh, you are my friend because I hypothetically assume that I can act and behave in certain ways, and you are my friend because I assume that I can act and behave in these ways, right? So there's this unconscious behavior that we feel permitted to enact in the world with our friends that we don't enact with strangers. We hypothetically assume it, and that's why they're our friend. And they are our friend because that hypothetical assumption can exist. I know that's a bit squirrely to say it, but they give you PhDs for that stuff, to put it bluntly. No, but some of the examples that I use is like Toy Story, right? Toy Story is really about people being horrible monsters to each other, coming out as friends in the end, nonetheless, becoming friends because of the hypothetical assumptions that are involved in friendship, and then getting to a virtuous place only to repeat the monstrosity again and again and again. And if you look at Friends, Friends is endlessly assuming things are okay because that person is your friend, and because they're your friend, it creates the ground, the foundation in which they actually can make that assumption. So it's total circular argument that actually makes sense for once. It's an actually a logical fallacy that's logical. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, that's what I was talking about in my dissertation, and using all these crazy movie examples and Friends and Toy Story and stuff to show how Aristotle's philosophy of friendship, with the essentially three levels of friendship, um, doesn't quite work, and Nietzsche's assessment of friendship works a bit better when we map it onto assemblage theory. Anyway, bygone days. Let's see. Maybe I should turn that into a book and like remove all the gobbledygooky stuff like hypothetical consent and just explain it in everyday language, if that's even possible with philosophy. All right. Reclaiming Life says you'll email me about it in the morning. Thank you for that. Being manic is so much better for me than being depressed. Yeah. And I have to sometimes ask myself in my journey with meditation and stuff like this, because I've just been on. I went to the doctor. I was just like I feel way too good. It's almost like this like it's just lasted for years. And I made a video not too long ago, about a year ago now, I guess, called and I was talking about how the last depression I had was the best depression I ever had, because I was no longer sort of in the depression, because meditation has helped me remove myself from my own life. As Gary Weber often says, my life is a lot better when I'm not in it. And I have that sort of feeling, right? Because even when my body has this depression feeling, and in the last 2 years, I've really only had like 2 down periods. And even when I was down, I was still up. And it's the weirdest thing. I'm totally unmedicated now because of dietary changes, working on my sleep, working on losing weight, doing extra powerful meditation, all kinds of things, food sensitivities that I managed to get rid of that probably were the real source of a lot of this suffering in the first place. And just being at peace with my own past. And like I said, being able to love that horrendous person that I've been has been a wonderful thing. Now I'm a virtuous little angel, right? No, I'm still human. But that's just been so amazing. But your comment there about being manic is so much better than being depressed. It is, but I sometimes like ask myself like, am I really feeling good, or is this just the longest manic episode ever? I don't know, but I seem to have endless energy and enthusiasm, and I'm not going to take it lightly. I'm not going to diagnose it as something that it isn't, and just enjoy the ride. And yes, sometimes these little depressions come, but they have less and less an impact on me, to the point that I almost don't even notice it. But then again, I've been working on removing my ego from my life, which is what we're going to talk about in this book extract very soon here. But great conversation. Thanks everybody for this. Cronewoman says it's true. I'm a psych nurse, and the doctor tells people one thing, and then I come and tell them different. I try to teach them memory techniques. Yeah, that's great. I mean, tracking what doctors say is a great thing to do because you'll get multiple stories, right? Greg says, I just want to quote from Martin Luther King. To those who hide from conflict, we need you in the end. We need support from the people to truly make a difference. And another quote from Nelson Mandela. The mass of people make a difference. A single person starts a difference. Very good quotes. Very good quotes. So let's dig into these a little bit deeper. To those who hide from conflict, we need you in the end. We need support from the people to truly make a difference. Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. Because it is the people who are hiding that we need the most, right? We need the most. I remember this brings to mind an argument, like not an argument in the fighting sense, but like a philosophical debate I had with a guy in Berlin, and he was talking to me about like how there are these, I guess sannyasi is the word or something like this, like these sages who are wise and they just sit and meditate in they meditate in caves and all that stuff, but they have the power to heal people from millions of miles away, but they don't do it because, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, these people are criminals. Like, this is a crime against humanity. To have the ability to heal people from thousands of miles away, but not to do it because of this, that, or the other thing. Like, what? We need these people, right? But the reality is at that time, the James Randi Foundation was a thing. They could have gotten $1 million, but all these people who have these special talents that somehow don't work in front of scientists, they wouldn't come and claim the prize. And they always had these bizarre explanations of why they wouldn't want to besmirch their special power with prize money. I'm just like, just give it to a charity, Anyway, the people that we need the support from are not the woo-woo, la-di-da people who apparently are in caves and have all kinds of powers that they aren't willing to share with others and that don't work in front of councils of scientists. What we need are just the everyday people who have survived and have their strategies to get out and share them, what they did, how they did it, and help others and have the discussion. So I really appreciate this. Reclaiming Life says, teaching others really helps us as individuals. My father finally became interested in learning Spanish, so I'm teaching him conjugation with memory techniques, and it helps me when feeling low. Oh, that's great to hear. And thanks for sharing that. Yeah, one of my things in the book is that memory techniques is a kind of meditation. And how could it not be, right? You're really focusing in the present moment. You're really focusing in the information. You're fusing with it. You're being mindful of multiple characteristics of things. How many syllables a word has, or how many words are in a phrase, and you're really fusing with it, and you're fusing with space itself. What could be more zen, so to speak? And some of the talks that I've given, and if you're in the mastermind, you have access to the Zen of Memory talk video, and I talk about it like Zen archery, like being one with everything, being one with the target before you even draw the bow, let alone nock it. You're just one with everything. You're one with the bow, with the quiver. You're one with the air between the target. You're one with the target itself. You're one with the arrow that will never be fired. You're one with the arrow that's never even been made yet, right? It's like not Zeno's paradox, but a maximalism of oneness with all possible iterations and the thing itself. And so when we're with memory techniques, we're just one with the target, we're one with the tools, we're one with everything and surrounding it, and it just feels so good to be one. Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful thing. So I thank you for mentioning that. Corona Woman Walking says, the best way to learn is to teach. Amen to that. December Maple, or Des Maple, I don't know if it's December or not. I just wanted to stick that in there. It says, apple a day keeps the doctor away. Indeed, indeed. Unless, of course, you have suicidal reactions to apples like I have had. Like I'm not kidding. Like I didn't know this till I did an elimination diet, but something in my gut, some creature that seems to have left. Um, I would eat an apple and I would want to jump off a bridge. More than want to jump off a bridge, I would be like jump, 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 and I could never figure it out. Like it would just come out of nowhere, or just be like really, really irritated. Took apples out, gone. But then I found that I could bake apples or make applesauce, no problem. So there's a chemical in there that was clearly causing a problem. I appreciate the sentiment of an apple a day keeps the doctor away. But even if that's true, it doesn't necessarily keep suicidal ideation away if you have problems. Um, that's something to really, really keep in mind. Oh, and I see Greg here says that apples are actually proven to cause depression. The nitrogen haliers can contact your taste buds in a negative way, which creates the mind to think negative. So let's stick to an orange a day, which will keep the doctor away. Yes, unless of course you have acid reflux. I mean, it's complicated stuff, right? But yeah, great. And you also say it's best to learn from elders than books. Sometimes the best way to learn is from others' mistakes. Yeah, well, I think learning from elders is definitely something we've lost, but we get the most of best worlds when we read the books of elders, right? Doesn't There is something about personal things, and we want to listen to older people and so forth. And uh, one of the things I've loved throughout my life is, I used to work for Community Care East York. I don't know if it still exists in Toronto, and I used to just go and help older folks with their home upkeep and so forth. And I just loved listening there. I'd always, spend like 2 hours just listening to them talk about their stories, and they're just not heard enough in our society. But I wouldn't say it's best to learn from elders better than books. I actually think it's the balance that we need. And one thing that we could do more of is go and collect the stories of our elder members of society and put them into books, put them into audiobooks. We could have a podcast just for the stories of elder people and just get them on the show and let them talk. So many stories, right? Now, not everybody's a great talker or a great storyteller, and one of the things you'll notice is, and it's not really an elderly thing, it's just a human thing, is that some people, they're just not very structured in what they're saying. So that could maybe be an issue. But why not? Why not? We've got the internet. We can store all the audio. Just like let them rock and roll. Get them talking. We'll call it the Elder Wisdom Podcast. Let me know if you want to collaborate on that. The Elder Wisdom Memory Archive Podcast. That title can use some work, I think. Let's see. Crone Woman says, "Oh goodness, I went back to low carb because carbs seem to stimulate that impulse in me as well." Right. Des Mabel says, "Oh my God, sorry, I didn't mean to trigger anyone." No worries. We actually need to um, be triggered. Actually, we need to have resources so that we have internal resources that if we are triggered, we can deal with it. We have the wherewithal to do it. So I want to point out that you don't have to apologize for this. I actually appreciate your sensitivity in apologizing, but one thing you can do is point out that we're apologizing too much, and we're creating sensitivities that didn't used to be there, and that's a huge problem in society right now. And Jonathan Haidt is a great educator on this issue. So what is it called? The Coddling of the American Mind. Check that out. And he did All Against One, which we did a live stream all about, and that's about protecting freedom of speech, because we can't, go around restricting speech just because people have grown, you know, sensitive to things. And so I didn't feel triggered, and I do appreciate the sentiment, but we also need to pause upon this and just say, look, you can develop the inner resources to deal with it, because the world is just a giant trigger. And if you can deal with your diet and reduce some of that, you probably won't be triggered at all. Because I used to be triggered, and I actually talk about it in the new book, something that really triggered me really badly. But it's not the world's fault. It's not the context's fault. It's partly because of the condition, and the condition was, making that possible to be so triggered. And I didn't have the resources to deal with it at the time. And I really see a lot of people not having those resources, and it's part of the reason why I wrote the book as I did, and how memory helped me, how memory training did the good work of helping me. Reclaiming Life says, when I'm walking around at the campground, my parents stay at. I love stopping and asking elderly people what their best memories and experiences in life have been. Wonderful. Wonderful. It'd be great if you could record them sometime. I know probably people would be like, well, what are you going to record? You send them to the FBI? No, no. But I'd love to hear some of those. Greg says, if you say sorry too much, it takes away the meaning out of the word. It almost becomes a hate word, so screw Canadians. Yeah, yeah, well, I'm Canadian, and people sometimes point out to me that I say sorry. But we don't mean sorry, uh, usually, or often. We mean something else. It's more like I acknowledge that that this is a place to explain that something. Well, maybe it is just stupid even to do that. I don't know. Blame Canada. Blame Canada. All right, so let's get into this book extract here for you all, and it starts like this. What the hell are you doing? The man asked me, his hold around my neck trembling with what must have been a combination of nerves, anger, and fear. Few people know this about me, but this stranger grabbed me just in time to stop my hypercharged body from jumping in front of a subway train in Toronto. Trigger warning, by the way. I don't remember what I answered or how I explained myself. My head was pulsing and warm with angelic voices telling me that everyone would understand because they wanted me to do it. I had just been released from the Clark Institute for Mental Health. I was a complete mess, my nerves shattered from a massive manic episode. It lasted for months, 3 of which I spent in the hospital, and most of those months I spent arguing that I didn't need to take lithium because I understood the secret relationship between the Latin alphabet and the Arabic symbols for 1 and 0. After the subway episode, I was back in the hospital, this time laying on the floor. They had no bed for me this time, and they gave me the biggest, whitest pill to swallow that I'd ever seen. And later, they gave me some more. I'd been in and out of mental institutions for some time, and I wasn't getting better, but I did get better, and I got better because I got sick. I got sick of trying to find peace through pills. Instead, I sought solace in 2 secondary regimes of treatment I'd been exploring all along: memory and meditation. When I combined these and made them my primary source of stability, things changed, and far more than I ever could have imagined. So this is what this book is really all about. It's the story of how I dragged myself back from the ledge. And many times since, it's about how a combination of consistent meditation and memory training have done more for me than any medication I've tried. I'm not entirely free from challenges, but I wound up completing the BA challenged by this episode, followed by 2 MAs and a PhD. I've written more than 15 books on memory, started 2 online businesses, and essentially given manic depression the biggest middle finger I can muster. All this, and yet my brain remains very similar to the one that drove me so close to so many ledges. Since writing my first memory training book on German vocabulary, I've been keenly aware of how relaxation helped me both learn and use these memory techniques for accomplishing many memory feats. However, it dawned on me only recently that this understanding of how to calm the mind and generate states of creativity through meditation needed more explanation. As the author of thousands of articles, podcasts, and videos, I have received thousands of emails from people who struggle with focus and concentration. Most would take to memory techniques like ducks to water if they could just calm the mental noise in their minds. Even if these people could achieve only temporary release from what Sam Harris refers to as the committee chewing up so much brain space, they could begin to experience the mnemonics that would drive their learning accomplishments and help them achieve their dreams. So, as much as this is a book about my own redemption, it is an instructional book too. Like many such books, everything I have to share could be compressed onto a couple of index cards. Some readers question why I've used so many pages and so many videos and so many podcasts to explain something so simple. And for those readers, the chapter endings and appendix will serve. For most of us, however, we need space and context to percolate abstract ideas and isolated instructions. These are the learners who need to know about what techniques are in great detail, and this need will be served. Others need to know the reasons why certain techniques work, and for these readers, I share my story. Then there are those readers who need to know how the techniques work, and in these cases it is not always clear, but wherever possible I will share the brain science I'm aware of and a wide variety of sources. You can follow up on your own. About the stories from my own life, I have included them for a few reasons. First, many people have loved Moonwalking with Einstein, Joshua Foer's incredible study of the memory competition world and how he rose through its ranks. However, people new to memory techniques have complained that he doesn't do much teaching. I feel I understand why they come to this conclusion about Foer's book. It's hard to perceive the great wisdom he shares about memory techniques when you've never used them before. You can easily feel locked out and confused. Similar complaints have arisen regarding Lynn Kelly's The Memory Code, a book where she does not even make teaching memory techniques its express purpose. Rather, it's a book focused on showing the role of memory strategies in the survival of cultures deep into history. If you already use memory techniques, you'll perceive many wonderful angles that supplement and improve your practice because previous experience allows you to see more. In writing this book, I sought to combine story with instruction and have done my best. But memory techniques are technical. Theory about them is pivotal, and what must be hundreds of thousands of discussion posts all over the internet about using them is testament to their many ins and outs. These often boil down to personal preference and insights culled from study and practice, and my hope is that using stories will help interest more people in paying the techniques their due and make the technical aspects more interesting and accessible to those who find them challenging. Now let's talk about why other memory techniques or why other memory books aren't like this one. The reason is that many books about meditation completely leave out stories because their authors claim they've scrubbed out their egos, or at least gotten them under control. Others make useful reference to biographical matters in ways readers might miss, and these authors are not wrong in thinking that too much biography creates precisely the attachments they are trying to help people avoid. So I found a refreshing alternative to all these styles in the form of many people that I go on to talk about, and then I say, if my stories of overcoming major limitations helps you in your life, perhaps you'll be encouraged to take more action with the challenges and the rich experiences these techniques will. Sorry, there's edits all over here, but you'll basically have rich rewards. So if nothing else, it is the uncomfortable parts of life that have taught me the most, and this book is written for those who have been struggling to experience enough calm to focus long enough to learn and implement memory techniques. Because even the simplest mnemonic strategies can be difficult to understand if your mind is occupied by unhelpful noise and distraction. And so it goes on. But anyway, that's an extract for this book today. And Greg says Canadians think they are better than everyone else. Well, in any case, I hope you enjoyed that little bit of an extract. The introduction is more of an introduction than I remember, but not that more than I remember, but the dramatic part, the dramatic story carries on, and I'm looking forward to the edit, and I hope you are too. And since you're all so quiet, I think we'll call it a day. But thank you, everybody who was so active today. And just to sum up, this whole situation with this exam cheating scheme is a big lesson. It's a big lesson and a wake-up call for people to get memory training and to use that as the ultimate advantage, because it is the ultimate advantage. There is no advantage more powerful, more rapid, more meaningful, more guaranteed if you can just find your way in. So if you're struggling to learn memory techniques, there's a law in the universe, which is that if you don't get it right the first time, come back from a different angle, read another book, take another course. Don't give up. Too many people give up the first time that they struggle or fail or face an obstacle, and that's just not a practical success strategy, is it? And I don't know how to get that message out as far as possible, but if most people would just try things a couple of times, they're much more likely to get it. And there's some interesting research in addiction studies that shows that people who continue to try to quit their addiction will succeed eventually. And obviously, like, there's just this obvious logic to that. Like, if you keep trying, you'll eventually succeed. But it's interesting that in addiction studies, like, one of the key factors is continuing to try. And I think part of the reason is they develop the actual skills of continuity and continuation, and they get breakthroughs, they get insights and so forth. And it's the same thing with learning a skill. If you allow the frustration to cause you to quit and to give up, well, then you've quit and you've given up and you're not coming back. We need to help people understand that if you just persist, you actually can find breakthroughs, but there's a skill of persistence. And part of that skill of persistence is reading more than one book, taking more than one course if you need to, and actually putting into action what needs to be put into action there. And one of the things that you need to, put into action is the actual taking of the course from beginning to end, the reading of the book from beginning to end. But we talked earlier today about what that means, reading a book from beginning to end. And it's similar to courses, actually. You can treat books in the way that I suggested you can treat courses in the way that I suggested that you put you can approach courses, but you still ultimately want the whole big picture, and then you want to take action, and you want to take action, take action, take action. And so one of the things to do is read a book all the way from beginning to end and then read it again. Take a course from beginning to end and then take it again. And so that's been a strategy that's been very, very useful for me. And then before you even try anything, you have the big picture. I'm about to do this myself, actually, very soon, where it's going to be very tempting to take actions before I have the whole picture, because it's a pretty vast course. It's about a very technical subject. And it's a subject where there's a lot of learning by doing. And I already know the course is going to be like, okay, now let's complete this exercise. But I know from many, many learning experiences that the definitive factor of success is not taking action necessarily when they say to take action, but to take action when they say to take action after you completed the course. So you have the big overview, right? Because you can cross-index things in your mind in action when you know where you're going. And so one of the biggest things is that people just don't complete things anymore because, as we talked about today, dual path readership, grazing, and all that jazz. All right, so that's it for today, Stefan. Thanks for your thank you, and great to see you. Thanks for your participation. Thanks for the participation of everybody. And let me know if you have any questions that follow up. Come visit me at magneticmarymethod.com. If you don't have the free course already, get it at magneticmarymethod.com/YT. And hit that thumbs up. Let me know, in the comments if you're watching the replay, what you're doing, what's going on with you, and if you have questions, comments, etc. And what else can I say? Really appreciate each and every one of you, and look forward to more in the near future. And hopefully we don't have any crazy news stories like this to harp on about. All right. Thanks, everybody. Until we have a chance to speak again, keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.